Finally, the result of Musk's false and misleading statements and material omissions, investors who purchased Tesla stock in the period after the false and misleading statements, but before accurate information was made known to the market, were harmed. That's right, it is a serious issue. Even more bad news is on the way for the electric car makers who have been able to survive based on subsidies. This is about to dry up, reports The Hill. Electric car manufacturers are only allowed to offer federal tax breaks on their first 200,000 vehicles sold under a law passed back in 2009 under the Obama administration. Many are now hitting that cap, including Tesla. And if you remember, Tesla has sued Ontario because they stopped it. And this is something that large corporations can do under NAFTA and these partnerships with government. They're treated equal to the government, and they have projections of the governments make changes, and they can sue them if it affects their profit. And the amazing thing about this is the fact that Democrats are saying it's crazy that we might allow the electric vehicle tax credit to run out just as the American electric vehicle market is starting to gain a foothold. Well, if it's starting to gain a foothold, then why do they need to be incentivized? And why would we incentivize this anyway? Nobody but the Democrats want to do this. We've got the Electric Cars Act now being pushed by 4 Democrats, 2 of them who want to run for president in 2020, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. No Republicans have signed on to these 2 bills in the House or the Senate. As a matter of fact, they said exactly what the problem is. We've got Pat Toomey saying the government shouldn't be interfering in people's choices of vehicles based on merits. It should be subsidizing one category of products at the expense of others. In other words, you can buy a non-electric car, but it'll just bankrupt you with all the things that we put on there. And as Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, said, I'm okay with electric cars, but I don't think somebody who can afford to pay cash for a $100,000 car should be subsidized by somebody who has to borrow money to even try to get a $30,000 car. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight.
Fueling your body is hard work. That's why we've introduced the InfoWars Life Daily Digestive Pack to help you fuel it right. Combine Flora Life Everyday Maintenance and Carnivore to help you fuel your gut and body and take advantage of the powerful nutrients you receive. There's no better way to power your body. Flora Life is a powerful probiotic supplement with 20 of the most potent clinically studied probiotic strains. When paired with Carnivore, our incredible enzyme formula that helps you break down nutrients, these formulas fuel your gut and your body to help you fight toxins and stay fueled all day. These incredible formulas can help keep your body in tip-top shape in the fight against stress, age, and outside toxins. There's no better time to try Flora Life and Carnivore to see how well they can support your body. Don't miss out on the chance to fuel your body and support recovery.
These people can yell all they want to. Doesn't matter. I believe him. You ask me, do I believe him? Absolutely, I believe him. I think she was abused by the process. I think the allegations by Mr. Avenatti and people like that are despicable. And it's all about power. It's all about delaying. It's all about delaying the hearing to keep the seat open. It's not about the truth.
That's right. It's not about the truth. It's all about power. And we had flowers given to her. We'll talk about how they handled this with kid gloves for Ford. Go ahead and kill that music there. They handled this with kid gloves, but we had flowers for her, and we spent lots of hours in testimony, back and forth. But they're still not satisfied. As you heard, the Pussy Hats screaming at Lindsey Graham going down the hall. No, that's, and of course, Christine Ford was a pussy hat. But it's also, Pussycat also works as well, because her lawyer is named Katz. And we've seen pictures of her lawyer with Hillary Clinton. Her lawyer was the lawyer for Ramirez, accuser number 2, who was a no-show. She didn't want to show up. She said, hey, just read Ronan Farrow's article, which even the New York Times said was not credible. So, yeah, this is what's behind it. I think it was pretty much summed up. It's a satire, folks. It was summed up by the Babylon Bee, a satire said success after a full day of hearings and lots of hours with Pussycat. Everyone believes exactly what they already believed about Kavanaugh. After hours upon hours of testimony, questioning, and monologues by presidential hopefuls, every single person in the country still believes exactly what he or she already believed about Brett Kavanaugh going into the hearings. Everybody tuned in the hearings in order to enforce their viewpoints, not to be swayed by a single piece of evidence going the opposite direction. We accomplished exactly what we wanted to here, said Dianne Feinstein. Of course, this is a satire. Everybody is more divided than ever before, and the levels of hatred are at an all-time high. That is the point. And folks, that may be satire from the Babylon Bee, but it is the reality that we live in. We are, or should be, the laughing stock of the world. On my way into work this morning, I'm flipping around early morning, listening to the BBC News at the top of the hour, and they're talking about this instead of what's happening in Nairobi, which is what they typically do. That kind of esoteric post-empire gossip that they typically cover. No, they're talking about this nonsense. Now let's play video clip number 8, because this is how absurd it really was.
If it's buffed or boofed, how do you pronounce that?
That refers to flatulence. We were 16.
Okay. And so when your friend Mark Judge said put the same thing in his yearbook page back to you, he had the same meaning. It was flatulence.
I don't know what he did, but that's my collection. We want to talk about flatulence at age 16 on a yearbook page. I'm game.
Yeah. You want to talk about flatulence jokes? When I was 16, something that was on a yearbook page? All right, we'll do that. Let's spend hours talking about that with the Democrat senators. This is not even a good joke. They're going to get to the bottom of this, and all those fart comments and the 16-year-olds were making in their yearbooks at the time. Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah called the hearing a national disgrace. He was being kind. John Cornyn said it was the most embarrassing scandal for the U.S. Senate since the McCarthy hearing. Lindsey Graham said it was the most despicable thing he has seen in politics, and we got a lot of comments from Lindsey Graham. He went ballistic on these people. But then, of course, Kirsten Gillibrand was not satisfied. She thought it was unfair to Chrissy Ford. We can't ever be fair enough to the pussy hats. She had a female prosecutor question her on the details. Can you imagine that? How audacious that she would be questioned on the detail. She is to be believed. You don't ever question a woman about it. Women never lie. Unless, of course, they're Republican women or conservative women. They don't deserve to be heard. It's kind of interesting. The Democrats, when they talk about equality, right, they don't really know what they're talking about. They always demand equality of results, not equality of opportunity. And those two things are mutually exclusive. Because if you're going to mandate equality of results and you don't have an equality of opportunity. The other thing is, when it comes to all of this Me Too movement, she deserves to be believed. She must be believed. Well, no, she deserves to be heard, but then she has to make her point. She doesn't deserve to be believed. She deserves to be heard. She has to earn the credibility. Because if you don't have to earn the credibility, if any accuser, and this is the problem with the Me Too movement, if any accuser is immediately put on a pedestal and believed in, you cannot question anything that they did, can't question the details, because that's basically what Gillibrand is saying here. Can't question the details. Well, then that means that there is no presumption of innocence. And that's true. There is no presumption of innocence. We even had Chuck Schumer say that. There's no presumption of innocence. And this is only 9-10 months. It was December 2017, December of last year. And we're at the end of September here. So it's only been 9 months, maybe 10 months since Chuck Schumer had false allegations made against him as part of the Me Too movement. The A in there. And he was furious about that. And he said, we are going to use the full extent of the law to prosecute these people who made false charges against me. But then he participates in this and says there is no presumption of innocence. And folks, one of the big issues coming out of this is if Kavanaugh is confirmed, and they're going to have the vote today, later today. If he is confirmed, I hope that he understands the importance of due process, of search warrants, of the presumption of innocence, and all of the other things that we have in our society and in our system of law, not because somebody just arbitrarily decided to give them to us, but because people had suffered under this in the past. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Ryan Bundy yesterday, because I think it's a good thing for somebody who has felt the scourge, the persecution, the whip of government, to not bow down to that, but to stand up to it. People who stand up to that, people who have put things at risk and have been attacked unfairly, unjustly, persecuted by the government as the Bundys were, they understand why you have to have these safeguards for our individual liberty. They have seen the overreach of the government. They understand why we need to have sovereignty at the state level, at the local level, why we need to have a balance of power at the various levels of government rather than this top-down pyramid structure of power and usurpation that is being forced down our throats. And so in a small way, if he does become justice, I think this will make him a slightly better justice. I don't really have a dog in this fight, other than the fact that I don't want to have any Democrats pick these Supreme Court justices, because they will be very proactive in terms of taking away our freedoms, in terms of usurping new authority over our lives. And we have seen the judge, the Republican-appointed judge, the Reagan-appointed judge that he replaced, Anthony Kennedy, has gone along with the activist, statist judges on the Supreme Court in the past many times to intrude into our lives, to make rulings on areas that they have absolutely no authority, that the federal government has no authority, let alone the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not there to make law. And we have a 9th and 10th Amendment that they all swear to uphold. And so I'm very concerned about Kavanaugh, quite frankly. I'll defend him because he is an innocent man in this particular situation. I don't like the way this whole thing has shaken out. I'm not happy with him as a judge. I don't think that he stands up for our individual liberties anywhere near as much as he should. And of course, he is an insider. It's one of the reasons why they have defended him so vociferously when they threw Roy Moore under the bus for exactly the same kind of stuff. He's tied in with the Bushes, with all these other people. But we'll talk about this process and what it has done to our country.
We all.
Alex in Michigan, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Alex Jones, good to talk to you again, sir. We are Alex Jones. We're Julian Assange. Thanks for exposing the Skynet program launching in China, where the robots are taking over. Julian Assange is talking about it now. We are the resistance. I use the products. Everyone should go to InfoWarsStore.com. Get the Survival Shield X2. I've been using that like 4 years, and it's pretty awesome. I take it every day. But the Chinese Illuminati, I love how you talk about that. Sometimes the history with the Rockefellers, taking over, and then they export the fluoride, hydrofluorosilicic acid there, put it in our water to dumb us down. And great job, Alex. What can I say?
No, brother, you're doing a great job. But what's frustrating is it's all admitted. And you see the big think tanks and John P. Holdren saying put fluoride in the water to lower their IQs, and then they do it, and they're just such evil jerks. They're so cold-blooded.
I know. It's like, why can't they just, let us be and have us run our own lives? People talk about, states' rights. I think, individual rights is what it comes down to, and medical freedom and the right to choose what's in our own bodies. And I choose to have the InfoWars products in my body because I'm trying to fight these globalists.
Well, I can tell you X2, unfortunately, it's our last run of it. The special has to end this weekend. 25% off. It's amazing. And again, just having good iodine in your body versus the bad halogens is night and day. God bless you, Alex. I appreciate your call. He's the amazing Lucas. Every one of his videos is really good, really informative. and he's a champion bodybuilder and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he's the Amazing Lucas on Instagram, at I'm the Amazing Lucas, YouTube the Amazing Lucas, and he just got involved in the last year or so because of all the stuff that he has seen. So it's great to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Man, I tell you, what would you call the state of the nation right now? What would you call that?
Hysterical, and it's manufactured hysteria. That's exactly what it is. Because everything from Maxine Waters, like, that's real. When it comes to the mob, and the thing is, many people were focusing on what you were saying, but if you really go back in time, they've always been saying some off-the-wall things. The only difference is now people are cheering. And once you have Tommy Lauren getting water thrown in her face, it's only a matter of time that water becomes acid.
When do they stop, or how far does this go?
They won't stop. They absolutely won't stop. Because what they won't allow to happen is a repeat of what happened in 2016. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. What we're seeing is it's the tipping point. And while they're figuring out and re-strategizing right now, this is the time that we need to consolidate and plan for 2019, 2020, because what they're planning for is 2030, 2044. So we have to join our forces together and really figure it out, because
and we've got to reach out across racial and cultural lines.
Absolutely.
Because they are sowing classical race-based garbage, and then to play a demographic number to steal the American dream. It's so cold-blooded.
It absolutely is. The thing is, they what the left touches, they destroy. And for people who don't believe that, you can look at the Black community, everything from separating fathers with the welfare to putting Planned Parenthoods in the communities to presently right now saying voter IDs it's racist. It's racist. It's like we all know that's not the case. You want the votes from the legals. But what the frightening part is, what should be alarming to people right now, is that they have their eyes on America. That should be the frightening part, because guess what? That affects you, that affects me, that affects everyone. And that's why you need to pick up and fight. And I'm not saying incite to violence, but you need to fight. And, no pun intended, but it is an information war.
And it's true. I mean, what you said is everything they touch turns to crap. Why in the world would we want these people running things? The Amazing Lucas, at I am the Amazing Lucas on Twitter. Be sure to follow him. You're listening to Real News with David Knight.
Welcome back. We're going to take a look at what happened yesterday, but before we do, real quickly, just as context, we're talking about the inane questions, the outright manipulation and hatred, and we've got an amazing clip from Stephen Colbert, something that he said last night. Really underscores the vitriol, the hatred, and how even Ford is being used by these politicians. And Lindsey Graham got to the meat of that in his angry comments directed at Feinstein. We're going to play all of that for you, but I want to give you one piece of news to just show how irrelevant this nonsense, this show trial, this soap opera is to our real lives. We just had the DEA take CBD, cannabidiol oil, off of Schedule 1 drugs with the approval of the FDA. Now, think about this. A Schedule 1 drug says that there is no medical use whatsoever, that it is highly dangerous, highly addictive. And we've got marijuana on as a Schedule 1 drug. And they put CBD on there, even though CBD doesn't have any psychoactive effect. It absolutely does nothing to your mind. And it is very effective in terms of health issues. And why is this being done? It's being done because a wealthy pharmaceutical corporation has come up with a product that they want to sell. So the FDA says, we have approved that. And then the FDA goes to their buddies, the DEA, and says, we want you to decriminalize that. And so they changed it from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 5 so that you can write a prescription for this. Folks, all of these schedules, as I've said before, were created by the United Nations. They were the ones who started the war on drugs. And they created all of these 5 schedules, and they put the drugs in the various schedules, actually the 4 schedules. They were the ones they were concerned about that as a Schedule 5, Schedule 4, 1 through 4, addictive drugs and so forth. 5 is just anything that you got to get a prescription for. So the UN was not involved in that. But they had the 4 schedules of drugs in 1961. It was 1971, 10 years later, that Richard Nixon did exactly what the UN wanted to do, and he called it the war on drugs. It has been a war of drugs, and it has been committed against our people. You won't hear anything about this in the Supreme Court hearing. Do you think you ought to have some questions asked about that? No. We're all asking about who said this and who did that in their high school parties, for which she can't remember any details consistently, for which she has no witnesses back up anything that she has to say. And to underscore the hypocrisy, Juanita Broderick was there. Said, I wanted to get here and look at these hypocrite Democrats in the eye who had absolutely no interest in hearing my charges or the other women, the multiple accusations of violent rape and sexual assault by Bill Clinton. Didn't want to hear it. Wouldn't even consider it. She didn't deserve to be heard or believed. Didn't have her chance to put her case out there at all. And so we have this situation. Again, I'll underscore this. There's, in marijuana plants, there's CBD and there is THC, and you can adjust those by selective breeding so that you have virtually no THC in some of these plants. And again, they've done the same thing for hemp, even though there isn't any THC in hemp. And it can be used for textiles. It can be used for ropes. It can be used for all these different things. It can be, you can buy the products, even health supplements, to sprinkles that you can put on your salad or whatever. But you can't grow that here. Got to have special permission from the federal government to grow this stuff. That's why you got Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell and say, hey, we could grow a lot of this stuff in the bluegrass state. Let's take the prohibitions off of this instead of us buying everything from Canada, because it's legal to use it. It's legal to ship it and so forth for the hemp. And now they're starting to do that with CBD. The psychoactive component is THC. This is the insanity. See, the insanity of our government goes far beyond this stupid show trial that they put on yesterday. And as I point out, this came 3 months after the FDA approved Epidiolex, a CBD preparation for rare types of epilepsy that's made from cannabis grown in the United Kingdom. We don't need to pay for that. You can buy this much more cheaply from your neighbor or grow it in your yard if they would let you do it. They're going to charge $32,500 a year, this British pharmaceutical company, for you to treat your epilepsy with this. We know that it's effective for epilepsy. As a matter of fact, you got a lot of kids who've been damaged by vaccines, who have uncontrollable tremors and epilepsy. Even in Texas, where they don't recognize medical marijuana, they recognize that as a special case, because the only thing that works is marijuana to treat it. But we got to pretend that it doesn't have any medical uses. That's why it's a Schedule 1. And now they say the only good news about this is by taking it off of Schedule 1, now they can start to do some medical research that they will respect for humans. But this is about the money. They're going to do this because these pharmaceutical companies have turned the corner on this. You got John Boehner, who said he was unalterably opposed. But now he's seen the green. Not the green that they're growing, but he's seen the green, the money that is growing on all of this. And just real quickly, again, it does not get you high. It is non-psychoactive. You can have a wide range of medical benefits with this. Let me just read you some of the things that CBD helps. Reduces nausea and vomiting. It suppresses seizure activity. It combats psychosis disorders. It combats inflammatory disorders. It combats neurodegenerative disorders. It combats tumor and cancer cells. It combats anxiety and depression disorders. It combats pain and pain-related disorders. But you're not allowed to have it. Why? Because the UN said so. And conservatives who want to keep people off of hallucinogenic drugs are too stupid or disinterested to understand that this medical miracle natural product doesn't have any psychoactive component to it. And even if it did, your war on drugs hasn't worked for 47 years. It's only made things worse. So we have all these different issues. I'm not going to go into all the details of it. I'll just say this about Schedule 1 drugs, just to underscore this. Schedule 1 drugs, and you've had some Republican congressmen even questioning the Trump administration drug bureaucrat as to why this is not happening. Why is marijuana a Schedule 1 drug classed in with LSD and MDMA and heroin? Why is it there? It doesn't belong there. It's got medical use. So first of all, it shouldn't be in a Schedule 1 drug. Schedule 2 drugs are things with high potential for abuse, although not as bad as Schedule 1. Now, remember, marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug. Here's some of the Schedule 2 drugs that are not as bad as marijuana, according to our federal government. Things like OxyContin. Oh, yeah, right. Fentanyl. Those are Schedule 2s. We have an epidemic. We got people dying all over this country. And you know what? They wouldn't have gotten addicted to that stuff if they had had the pain medication from CBD or marijuana. And even if they are addicted, that can get them off of their addiction. So OxyContin, fentanyl, meth, Schedule 2. That's not as dangerous as marijuana, they want to tell us. Cocaine. It's absolutely insane and criminal. And of course, what's going to happen to you? Just your first offense. You can get up to a year in jail or a fine of $5,000 if you want to use medicine in this country. And of course, you can have other consequences. You can get fired from your job. You can have your children stolen from you by CPS because there's no due process or presumption of innocence for all of us, the hoi polloi, the proletariat, not like there is for an establishment Republican. But we'll talk about this absurdity when we come back.
Antifa! Riding shotgun with me is Rufio Panman, on Facebook for now at Rufio Panman PB, and Instagram Rufio_Panman. Listen, we don't have a choice. Think about how bad the globalists are. If they get control, that's what we should be worrying about. It's not a sacrifice we're making. You know, we can trick ourselves and say, oh, we're making these sacrifices. No, the real sacrifice would be letting real tyranny come in because they want to break America's back and teach us a lesson.
Yeah. Definitely.
Get into just your background, your life, type of Americana guy that never got politically involved until he saw women and children getting beaten up.
Well, you know, I've always been pretty patriotic. You know, I grew up on country music. You know, I've always just kind of been very passive and kind of a shy person. And it wasn't until recently, after Trump got elected, obviously, where everything started to get crazy. And I started seeing people getting attacked in the streets for wearing a Trump hat. And I just knew that wasn't something I could stand for. I didn't want to see that come to my city. I didn't want to see, you know, my future children have to deal with that. So I started getting involved, and that's when I met Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes's group that he created back in 2016. And it's ever since then, it's just been a huge learning experience and seeing what's really happening. You know, once you kind of test the waters, you start to see what's under the surface, and it's really ugly when you start to, you know, see what's under the surface. A lot of evil stuff going on, and
leftist cities, leftist police defending people that attack women and children.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it doesn't really get any worse than that. But hopefully, you know, we'll cross our fingers and hope it doesn't get worse than that and kind of get a handle on it. But again, you know, that requires a lot of support from other people other than just us. Go and support your fellow patriots and their businesses. If you know somebody who's loves America and they're running a business, go support their business. Because right now, business is being attacked, and it's on a grand scale all over the nation. But I'll tell you right now, when our boys are out there, when our Proud Boys are out there strong, it's the strongest feeling. It's almost palpable, the energy of the freedom, the American spirit running through the streets. And I think that once they start to see, you know, these quote unquote casualties happen around them, it's extremely intimidating to see the American spirit in raw force like that. And you know, that's what we have going for us. And as long as we can keep that going, we can be extremely effective. It's all organic, and all this stuff. None of this stuff is scripted out. None of it's
a bunch of rats,
right,
attacking people's free speech.
Exactly.
I keep saying this. I can't imagine being a bunch of men and going out and trying to target somebody in a wheelchair or a woman. I would never kill myself, but if I was like that, I would kill myself. We'll be right back. Antifa!
We all know the importance of fish oils. While we are sure to provide them for ourselves, it's just as important to make sure your kids get their EPA and DHA too. Honor Roll is a powerful DHA fish oil formula for your child. Built from the ground up to support your child's development, this formula uses wild anchovy fish oil, ultra-purified krill oil, and wild salmon fish oil with vitamins to boost your child's mind and body. With this fish oil formula, you can support your child's optimal heart, joint, cognitive, and brain health while providing DHA, which has been shown to be essential for your child's brain growth spurts. Built on powerful ingredients with 580 milligrams of high DHA omega-3s, this formula is highly refined to eliminate nearly all heavy metals. If you're looking for a formula to help your child grow, look no further. Try Honor Roll from InfoWars Life at InfoWarsStore.com.
You're listening to Real News with David Knight. And now, covering the ongoing fight for the heart and soul of America, broadcasting from deep in the heart of Texas, it's David Knight.
All right, so let's get back to this circus on Capitol Hill yesterday. As it was underway, we had GOP senators getting doxxed. Several Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee had their home addresses and phone numbers released to the public on their Wikipedia pages. You know, because Wikipedia is such a trustworthy source. And, they have this community that is able to go in there and edit. And this is a good example of how responsible these people are. And of course, these people who are editing and producing Wikipedia, which is being used, by the way, as a fact-checking site, and Google, when you talk about climate change and you dispute their quote-unquote science that they don't want to release the data for, or you point out that the models haven't worked or whatever, whenever you do anything that criticizes their climate change agenda, and again, I'll repeat, the fact that you had Cuomo saying, hey, all these people are moving from New York because they want a warmer climate. It's like, okay, so you're obviously not worried about global warming, and the people who are moving to Florida aren't worried about it going underwater. But if you push back against this climate change nonsense, then Google will put up a disclaimer on your video. And that disclaimer will come from that truthful fact-checking site, Wikipedia, who just had their editors dox Republican senators during the hearing. Mike Lee, Orrin Hatch, Lindsey Graham all had their information put up on Wikipedia by the Wikipedia editors. The wife of Mrs. Hatch has been receiving calls nonstop on her birthday, they said today, as their home address was made public. So there you go. There you go. Another example of the tactics and the collusion of the left, from Google to Wikipedia, the hatred and the tactics of these people, just unbelievable anymore. Juanita Broderick showed up. She wanted to dox the Democrats. And she said, I wanted to look them in the eye, these Democrat hypocrites in the eye. Let me play for you what she had to say with Laura Ingraham yesterday.
Oh, it makes me go back to 1999 when Dianne Feinstein, along with every other Democrat, refused to read my deposition to the independent counsel. They wouldn't have nothing to do with it. That just shows you the difference in the double standard that existed back then and still does today. I think this is astonishing that they can do this to Mr. Kavanaugh.
Well, if your allegations should have been taken more seriously, why shouldn't this woman's allegations be taken seriously as well? I mean, the process notwithstanding, should her word not be respected? Just because yours wasn't respected years ago, why not respect her word and at least give her a chance to be heard?
Oh, I think that she should be heard, but I still have so many reservations about her comments. I can't imagine a young girl going through what Miss Ford said she went through and not tell anyone. You know, what I went through was horrific.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
And of course, the lady that found me was the first one that I told. But I told 4 other people. That's just something that I can't imagine that you can keep to yourself and not share with one of your closest friends.
That's what my wife said.
A lot of people who have been victims of sexual abuse or serious harassment say every story is different. There were a number of women who called into my radio show today, Juanita, who had actually been victims of rape and other sexual assault. This is a montage of what some of them said.
When I was 19, I was sexually abused. I know I've never forgotten the situation, and I cannot believe that this woman suddenly remembered now.
I was raped 40 years ago, and I'm absolutely furious. And I know that this is a last-minute ploy, again, by the left.
Having background myself of being a rape victim, you do not go about this the way this is coming out. This is for attention. And that does a horrible service to people that have actually had everything taken from them. I used to be a Democratic. Right. I will never vote Democratic again.
Juanita, quick response.
Oh, yeah, it's, I still just can't imagine it. People say, why didn't you go to the police, Juanita? Why didn't you do something? Bill Clinton was the police. I had no one to go to. It's like when Eric Schneiderman's victims came forward and said, when he was the Attorney General of New York, what do you do when your sexual abuser is at the highest law enforcement officer in your state? What do you do?
Absolutely right. What do you do? You're going to complain to the Attorney General about this? He's above everybody else. And the comments that Juanita Broaddrick said, I immediately told people that this had happened. That's one of my big questions, one of the big questions of my wife as we looked at this, and her response and what she said about what happened immediately afterward. The fact that how she got home, nobody that she talked to, the person driving her home, because she said she had to be driven home, the response and the interaction that she had with at the Safeway with a judge who she said was there, all of that we're going to take a look at later on. But Juanita Broaddrick also went on with Daily Caller. She said that she wanted to look Schumer, Durbin, Feinstein in the eye, and she wanted to ask for an apology from them because it's a double standard. She said, I have 20 times more evidence for my rape by Bill Clinton than Dr. Ford has against Kavanaugh. Democrats turned their back on me, said Juanita Broaddrick. They refused to read my testimony or to acknowledge me. In 1999, when I went public with my story, the Democrats turned their back on me. She said this mantra that all women deserve to be believed doesn't apply to her. She said all women are to be believed if they're not conservatives, and as long as the assault was not done by Democrats. And as I point out, remember, it was December of last year that Chuck Schumer, in this Me Too frenzy at the time, was caught up with some false allegations. But of course, he was to be believed because he's a Democrat. And he was to be given due process because he's a Democrat. He was to have the presumption of innocence because Chuck Schumer was a Democrat. But he doesn't afford any of that to anyone else because of political issues. And then she went on to say one more thing also about Keith Ellison. Juanita Broaddrick said Ellison is leading the Democrat Party right now. Actually, he's number 2. He's a deputy DNC chair. He should be kicked out of office. Karen Monahan has 10 times the evidence that Dr. Ford does. Where is her hearing? And of course, you have the newspaper there in Minnesota is having to sue to even get information about Keith Ellison's alleged abuse. They're not having hearings there. The women are not being heard there. This is the double standard. This is the hypocrisy. And this is what Lindsey Graham exploded over. Let's play the clip of Lindsey Graham as he goes off on Dianne Feinstein.
The day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have. I have a bipartisan, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less. Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
All right, that's Lindsey Graham, man. He was on fire, and every word that he had to say was absolutely true. I can't believe I'm agreeing with Lindsey Graham. I'm all. But folks, there is a process here that really does matter, and that transcends their partisan politics. Stay with us. Be right back. I'm David Knight.
I can't watch that hearing
for
thing.
every conspiracy theory that some crazy person made up.
I said I do not agree with you that the
I'll
U.S.
kick
government,
my
someone
computer
inside the
again.
government, had knowledge of the terror attack prior to the attack.
Oh, really? All over Twitter yesterday, mainline leftist sites celebrated and said America deserved it. Reality Winner had a top secret security clearance and was helping ISIS. There are so many. The average professor at UT down the street loves 9/11 and says America deserved it. There were elements in our government allied with radical Islam that helped them carry out the attack. Just like the terrorists are covering up New Mexico.
Alex, you can argue whether or not America deserved it or not. I don't think
America deserved it. I'm saying the left is cheerleading it.
Wasn't your theory, Alex. Your theory was not only did America not deserve it,
drove
but
me
the United
insane.
States government knew about the attack prior to the attack and decided to stand down. A very
almost
different
had to
theory.
come
I don't want to
get
spend
me
all our
with
time on
romance.
9/11. It's not that I'm running away from it. It's that the media misrepresents what I say about it. I believe Islamic terror and radical Islam is one of the #1 threats on the planet, probably #1. I know that there are criminals in our government like Brennan, who reportedly converted to Wahhabism. Obama helped launch the Arab Spring to overthrow our allies in Egypt, you name it. And I think that elements let this happen, like PNAC wrote, to let there be an attack to end up taking our liberties away. And I've got FBI was warned about flight schools. That's CBS News. FBI knew Al-Qaeda pilots were training in the U.S. order to stand down. ABC News. The State Department lapses aided 9/11 hijackers. And they had the airlift of evil, flying tens of thousands of Al-Qaeda fighters out. Our military was ordered to do it. I don't blame our military. They will say, oh, you hate our military. No, I love our military.
The bin Laden family was whisked out of the United States by President Bush himself right after the 9/11 attack. And they went back to Saudi Arabia, correct?
That's right.
When you had the World Trade Center go, people were put into planes that were friends, family, girlfriends, and they were put into planes and they were sent back for the most part to Saudi Arabia.
All I'm saying is there is a radical Islamic alliance with the left, and there are people in the government working to protect Islam. They got this imam that's connected to dozens of bombings. After 6 months, he's being released from British prison next week.
Oh, you said some things that I agree with. I believe radical Islam is the greatest threat to the United States, our freedom, maybe even the globe. I'll agree with that.
Maybe the left's bigger, though.
Well, I think the left is a different type of threat, and it's a longer term threat where radical Islam could kill a lot of people real fast, and the left, it's going to take a while for them to take over and take away our liberties and freedoms.
But I think we can deal with a straight-on attack like radical Islam. It's the left creeping around.
I don't like them either. I'm on board with that.
Well, this is video on screen of them saying Building 7 has already fallen. Have you seen that video? And it's right behind her.
Well, I can't hear her.
You want me to play it for you?
What? I'd like to hear her say it's already fallen. And by the way, Alex, anyone could throw a video, the picture behind it, a news person. That could be.
Well, she's saying Building 7 has fallen. They put the story out beforehand.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy.
We are getting information now that one of the other buildings, Building 7, in the World Trade Center complex is on fire and has either collapsed or is collapsing.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Well, pancaking almost like a precision implosion.
It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite in Mount Japan.
You're listening to Real News with David Knight.
Welcome back. Lindsey Graham was on fire. And as I said before, I agreed with every word that he had to say. I don't agree with Lindsey Graham on most things. I don't like his neocon orientation. I don't like his regime change. I don't like him standing with John McCain and all that McCainery of arming ISIS and so forth. But occasionally he says the right thing, just like Ron Wyden did when Ron Wyden exposed the lies of James Clapper. Got him to lie under oath. Of course, they never did anything about that. They never came after Clapper for committing perjury. They never came after Clapper or the NSA for violating the Constitution and spying on American citizens. But it was important to expose that. And of course, it's important for Lindsey Graham to expose the fraud of this process and what it's going to result in. And so good for him. I'm glad he did it. And again, I don't agree with Ron Wyden on anything except what I've never agreed with him on anything before or since, except what he did regarding what we eventually saw with the Snowden documents, but to show that James Clapper was a liar. Good for him for doing that. And I've played that clip over many times, and I'm sure I'll play this Lindsey Graham clip many times as well, because he was on fire and he was absolutely right. And he's got more to say, and we're going to let him say it. And right after this plug here, because folks, we need your support. We need you to support your health and to support this program and to support InfoWars. We're under attack. They don't want us telling you what's going on. And you know, we've talked about this many times, what's happening. Let me just tell you about some of the sales that you can find at InfoWarsStore.com. For the listeners of this program, we have a special sale. You can use the coupon code REALNEWS to get 15% off the ProPure King water filtration system. That's the large one. I've told you many times how you need to be preparing in advance to clean your water. You never know when contaminants are going to get in. Don't wait until after the fact, because there can be a great deal of damage once the government finally gets around to letting you know that there's toxic chemicals in your water. They may be even the ones putting it in there, but you know, they got better things to do, like these show trials, so they can't really do the things that you think they're going to do, which is to protect you. You got to protect yourself. And one of the ways that you need to do that is to make sure that you have clean water. So you can save 15% off the large gravity feed ProPure King water filtration system at InfoWarsStore.com. Just type in the code REALNEWS at checkout. I'll tell you a couple other items that we have on sale. We have Brain Force Plus, my favorite supplement. We heard Chrissy Ford yesterday saying that the details were indelibly etched into her hippocampus. Well, if you want to have that happen to you, you can take Brain Force, because that's what it is good for. It will help you to focus, and it will fine-tune all those details in your mind, and you'll probably be even more spot on than Chrissy Ford was, because she's having a great deal of difficulty remembering those details, as we'll show you later in the program. But you can get that for 40% off at InfoWarsStore.com. You can also get Secret 12, our vitamin B12 formula. You get the same effect that you would with a B12 injection, but you don't have to have the shot. You just put it under your tongue, tastes great, and get the same effect with that vitamin B12. Secret 12, 40% off. Finally, we have Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, our final run, 25% off while supplies last. Check out these products at InfoWarsStore.com. There are other sales that I'm not going to go through the entire litany. Let's go back to Lindsey Graham, and I want to play what he had to say about power. And then I'm going to play for you a clip from Colbert that illustrates the corruption and the motives behind this whole thing. And this is not about getting justice for a girl for what happened to her in high school 35 years ago. It's not about that at all, folks. Lindsey Graham got it exactly right, and I'm going to prove it to you. What Stephen Colbert said last night on his late night, quote unquote, comedy show. First, Lindsey Graham.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it, because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process. You came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. And unfortunately, President Trump doesn't have a dog. He doesn't have a friend in Washington. He has Stephen Colbert attacking him. Do you remember when the comedians used to be funny? on late night. Remember Johnny Carson? Remember Jay Leno? Even David Letterman in the early days, the beginning of his career, he was funny. But now we've got people like Stephen Colbert. These guys are nothing but partisan hacks and propagandists. They have become the court jesters of the Democrat Party. Here's Stephen Colbert to underscore what Lindsey Graham just said. All they want is power. This isn't about protecting Ford. They don't care about that at all. Here's Stephen Colbert to prove it to you in his own words.
Perhaps the Kavanaugh quote that sticks with me is his passionate condemnation of the hearing and its repercussions.
You sowed the wind. For decades to come, I fear that the whole country will reap the whirlwind.
You really need a better weatherman. Because, let me tell you, brother, this is the whirlwind. And the wind was sown when Donald Trump had 19 credible allegations of sexual assault against him, bragged about sexual assault on tape, and your Republican buddies up on that committee said, yeah, but we want our guy on the Supreme Court. And that's you, Brett. That doesn't mean you're guilty, but please save your indignation that finally someone is taking one woman's accusation of sexual assault seriously.
Oh, yeah. Where were you, Colbert? You hack. Where were you about Juanita Broderick or any of these other people about Bill Clinton? And what about Anita Hill? We all were supposed to believe Anita. I remember all the buttons. I believe Anita. I believe Anita. I never believed Anita. It wasn't even a serious case of sexual harassment. The allegations, even if true, I didn't believe were serious. I wouldn't say the kind of things that she alleged were said, but she had absolutely no proof of that. And yet, Anita Hill was defending Bill Clinton 6 years later and didn't want to hear Juanita Broderick, who didn't just say, well, he made an off-color remark to me. Juanita Broderick was saying, I was violently raped. And Anita Hill didn't want to hear that. And neither does Stephen Colbert. It is strictly partisan, as you heard. Said, well, this is about the fact that President Trump won and the fact that he's got a Supreme Court pick. And we're not going to let that happen. And it doesn't matter whether or not he's guilty or innocent. We're going to get even with him. And he played a little bit of that clip there. We're going to play some more of what Brett Kavanaugh said, because I listened to that on my way home after the broadcast. I was on yesterday, part of the Alex Jones show as well. And Kavanaugh took the stand as I was driving home. And it was absolutely, I really felt for the man. I don't know how you can be somebody like Stephen Colbert or his hack liberal partisan writers and not have any sympathy for somebody falsely accused like that, dragged through the mud, they and their family. After he has done a great job in his life in terms of, I don't agree with his politics, but the guy, I don't think deserves any of this. And this is simply a tactic by the Democrats. As Graham said, you want power. I hope you never get it. I hope these types of people never get this kind of power. And we've got to take this kind of power away from the social media companies, because they're the ones who are lying to your face, just like Stephen Colbert, and silencing the opposition and making false claims about Alex Jones, about me, about InfoWars, about everything that we do here. And so this is very important that people start to understand how pervasive this is. They're coming after you as well. It's not just people who are in the press, people who are famous, people who are going for a Supreme Court position. They're trying to take away your ability to read information and to share it with your friends, your circle of friends, and put that information out there. Your free speech is being shut down by these social media companies. They're not social. They're not social. And sitting there looking at your phone instead of interacting with people, that is not social. But these social media censors are the most anti-social institutions we've ever had, and some of the biggest corporations we've ever had. And just like we see with all this protecting women and so forth, the Democrats who say, oh, we're all about free speech. Oh, we're all about hating corporations or what? They embrace everything they say they despise, and if it fits their political agenda, because the means is justified by their ends. They want power. And I agree with Lindsey Graham. I hope they never get it. And that's why we're fighting this fight. Not so much because I care about Brett Kavanaugh, because I don't want them to have any power. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight.
We've got a statement now with regard to PayPal and reports that it has ended its relationship with InfoWars.
PayPal joining a slew of tech companies that have severed ties with conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, hitting his InfoWars where it hurts by no longer allowing the site to use the payment processor.
PayPal is the latest company to sever ties with Jones after YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest.
Last month, the website called Right Wing Watch posted a report highlighting PayPal's continued business relationship with InfoWars, and the Washington Post also noted how business on the InfoWars stores was booming.
PayPal is the latest big tech company to cut ties with far-right conspiracy website InfoWars, dealing a blow to one of founder Alex Jones's revenue sources.
This is, of course, coming at a time when many, at least reports out there of possible censorship of conservative voices and other people in the media has come to light as well. So Contessa, certainly a story that we're following very closely.
It actually fuels the Trump base because they do feel like they're being silenced.
And we're also standing up to social media censorship. That's the new thing.
Apple, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter have all booted Jones off their platforms. PayPal on Thursday night informed InfoWars, which runs an online storefront that sells survival gear and herbal supplements, that it has 10 business days to find a new payment processor.
You can't pick one person and say, well, we don't like what he's been saying, he's out. We have literally thousands and thousands of complaints coming in. And you just can't do that.
Jones hit back on his website, saying the InfoWarsStore.com site had no political content, and the move emphasizes how the decision was a broader attack on the InfoWars platform.
A PayPal spokesperson says, quote, "We undertook an extensive review of the InfoWars sites and found instances that promoted hate speech,
and bullying policies."
You're listening to Real News with David Knight. And now, live and uncensored, broadcasting from the great state of Texas, worldwide, it's David Knight.
You know, you had Stephen Colbert saying that, he played the impassioned plea, the tearful plea, actually, of Brett Kavanaugh. Brought to tears many times, choked up by what these partisan hacks had done to him. And then he was flayed on late night television by the so-called comedian Colbert. They said, "You're going to reap the whirlwind." He goes, "You're going to reap the whirlwind, buddy, because we hate Trump and so forth." And what he didn't allow him to finish, what he cut off of the clip, was exactly what Graham had also said. And that is, you're going to make it impossible to get anybody any good to want to be a part of government because they see this tactic of personal destruction. If you don't have something on somebody, you make it up to fit your political agenda. You don't want somebody in a position, so you're just going to make up dirt on them. And we saw it, I believe, with Roy Moore. We're seeing it definitely with Kavanaugh here. And Graham said, this is going to destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap. And to my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I've seen in my time in politics. And that's exactly what Colbert is legitimizing. These kind of despicable tactics. See, the problem is the Democrats see people as groups. And so they feel, I look at the situations that we have with Black Lives Matter and the NFL protests. They're kicking the cat. They look at a situation and they say, okay, well, we don't like this particular situation over here. And we're going to do things. What groups are involved? Okay, we got a black person here. So let's say we're not going to join blacks with whites to try to reform law enforcement or to even punish that one individual. No, what we're going to do is we're going to have the blacks against the blues, against the cops. We're going to say that all cops are bad and all the black people are innocent. We're going to make these kinds of generalizations, and we're going to break everybody into groups so we can get the groups fighting with each other. That's the typical approach. And then they go out and they kick the cat. And they say, so in order to do that, we'll go out and we'll attack veterans by protesting the national anthem and the flag and denigrating that. They continue to do this, always, breaking people into groups, this kind of oversimplification. Can't focus on the individual. Never focus on the individual. It's never about individual rights. It's always about group rights. And it's always about groups fighting each other. And you better watch out, because they're going to put you in a group. They've always done this. Racial groups, sex groups, every type of group. That's what the identity politics movement is about. It's why it's so corrupt. It's why it's so divisive. As I've said many times, yeah, they're bad individuals, and everybody needs to come together and get those individuals out of the police department and punish them as soon as possible. And if that isn't happening, let's get black and white people together and make sure that we have some reform to make sure that that can happen, so that the system, which is always going to protect itself, the bureaucracy is always going to circle the wagons, let's make sure that that doesn't happen. But instead, they don't do that. Instead, they make it always about the groups. And then they kick people who are not involved with that at all. Just like they kicked the veterans, now they're kicking Brett Kavanaugh. And they don't care. And what they're doing in the process is counterproductive. Because as Graham rightly pointed out, and as Juanita Broderick also pointed out, this is making it, the people that Laura Ingraham played, who called in there and said, I'm furious about this as a rape victim. Why? Because when they cry wolf, it makes it more difficult for women who are really victimized to get help when they're raped. Just like when they cry wolf about racism, it makes it really difficult to do something about racism. When they cry wolf about police brutality, it makes it difficult to do things when there's real police brutality. They have made every situation worse because they don't want to solve problems. They want to have people fighting, because that's how they divide and conquer. It is the divide and conquer party. And that's why I say, along with Graham, they want power. I hope they never get it. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Look at that. Everybody else is just like yellow or clear. That's because it's been denatured, it's been watered down. We didn't do that. You think I would metaphysically sell you something that is the very best I can get? I'd rather go to hell than do that. I will only give you the maximum best info, the maximum truth, the maximum product, because I want that goodwill. What I do to you, I do to myself. Don't you get the big secret? You ever seen fish oil look like that? No, you never seen that, have you? And this little jewel right here is solid liquid consciousness. Look it up. Find out how even the FDA and the government admits fish oil is incredible. The number one thing anybody can do for themselves is take good fish oil or krill oil. Just like our information is dynamite, so are our products. InfoWarsStore.com. You found it. It's the real news. Live from the InfoWars.com studios in Austin, Texas, it's your host, David Knight.
Welcome back. We're doing a post-mortem on the soap opera yesterday on Capitol Hill. As Senator Cornyn from Texas said, probably the most disgraceful hearings we've had since the McCarthy hearings. Because there is an element of McCarthyism in it. There's an element of witch hunt in it. Except this time it is the witches who are doing the hunting. And the Democrats, male and female, are out. It's a coven, I guess. That's what they call them. The Democrat coven is out there searching for scalps. And they don't really care, as Stephen Colbert said. We don't care. We don't care that we're corrupting this process. We don't care that we're going to make it impossible to get anybody that's any good to run for office, because even if you have a squeaky clean, perfect background, we will invent something. And we don't care. We really don't care about the facts. And so Graham saying, you want power, I hope you don't get it. He also said, if you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life and hold this seat open and hope that you win in 2020. And you've said that to me. You said that, not me, he said. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And he's absolutely right about this FBI investigation. He began by asking Kavanaugh, he said, did you know that they'd already had contact, that they had already recommended a lawyer to 20 days before they were talking? They held this to the last minute. This is all a tactic of delay, obfuscation, lies to try to get what they want, because they didn't win the election and they're going to lose the next election because they're waking up everybody in the country to see what corrupt, lying criminals they are. If they had won the election, they could have had more of a say. They could have said, well, we're not going to, here are the people we will approve or whatever. But they didn't. They didn't, because we saw what kind of people they are. And we don't want them to have power. And so since they don't have power, they will lie and they will do anything that they can to try to manipulate this process. They can't win the election, so what they'll do is they'll find a federal judge somewhere to tell the president that he can't execute his constitutional authorities, things that he has constitutional authority for, that he can't perform his duty. No, we're not going to let you do that because I'm a judge somewhere. And that's essentially what they're doing now. And I want to play for you again, because we got the American Bar Association now doubling down, even after Lindsey Graham said, you wanted an FBI investigation? Could have had the FBI investigation doing that. Now the American Bar Association is urging the FBI to take more time. This is nothing but a delay tactic. They want them to take more time to do more investigation and testimony and so forth after they've spent hours talking about what allegedly took place. And let's go back to 1991, the last time we had one of these ridiculous show trials like this, the Clarence Thomas hearing. And you had Joe Biden explaining to everybody about the FBI this and the FBI that. He says, you don't know anything if you think the FBI is going to make any kind of, they don't make a determination. They just take depositions from people. Well, we had 8 hours or 9 hours of depositions from the witnesses yesterday. Far more detailed than anything you're going to get from the FBI. But here's Joe Biden in 1991. 27 years ago.
The last thing I'll point out, the next person that refers to an FBI report as being worth anything obviously doesn't understand anything.
Take that, American Bar Association.
FBI explicitly does not, in this or any other case, reach a conclusion.
Hear that, American Bar Association?
Period. So, Judge, there's no reason why you should know this. The reason why we cannot rely on the FBI report, you wouldn't like it if we did, because it is inconclusive. They say he said, she said, and they said, period. So when people wave an FBI report before you, understand, they do not reach conclusions. They do not make, as my friend points out more adequate, they do not make recommendations.
That's right. And yet, we now have, 27 years later, the American Bar Association, reports CBS News, has urged the Senate Judiciary Committee and the full Senate to slow down the confirmation process. Slow it down. We want to run the clock out here. Let's see, what can we come up with? Oh, yeah, let's do the FBI. Yeah, we've already had 8 or 9 hours worth of testimony yesterday, but let's have them sit down and tell their story again to the FBI, and the FBI can write down what he said, write down what she said, and not draw any conclusions. It's not going to change anything, as Joe Biden said. It's one of the first time, again, I can't believe I'm agreeing with all these people. I agree with Joe Biden. I agree with Lindsey Graham. They're absolutely right about this stuff. Joe Biden was right. How about that? Right once. He was right once, 27 years ago. And hasn't been right since then, I don't think. He was wrong about a lot of things he said in that hearing, let me tell you. Let's talk about the money. It's always important to follow the money. I find this absolutely amazing that we've now got GoFundMe page. You know, this is going to be done, we were told, this is a great cost to Christine Ford. This is something, why would anybody come forward and make these kind of allegations? Well, it might help if you get $600,000. And it's still going up. One of the GoFundMe accounts, and there's at least 2 of them, by 4 p.m. yesterday, she had made $370,000. $370,000. The goal was $150,000 for the purpose of defraying the family's travel and security costs. Wow. Wow. She must be, I think she's going to do a lot of flying. We're going to talk about that later. You know, she said she couldn't come last week or couldn't come at the beginning of the week because, you know, I don't like to fly. Well, you know, it turns out in cross-examination that she does fly quite a bit. And she may become a real jet setter because she's got a big fund here for family travel. $370,000 as of 4 o'clock yesterday. Another fund that was started back on September the 18th and has since closed raised nearly $210,000. But of course, she came forward at great personal cost. You know what? I think that's another example of the Democrats not knowing the difference between cost and price. That was her price. And we know what she is. We're just haggling over the price. George Soros, by the way, has spent $246 million with pro-abortion groups to smear Brett Kavanaugh. It's reported by Life News. Laura Ingraham reported on Tuesday how Soros gave $246,000 to women's march partners. You know, all the pussy hat people. Or I guess we would just say the pussy cats, spelled K-A-T-Z, as in the lawyer who is the common lawyer for both Ford and Ramirez and is a close friend of the Clintons. We've seen multiple pictures of her with the Clintons and with Soros and so forth. And of course, the other guy that, the other lawyer that was sitting on her left, the guy with the gray beard, he is somebody who's had a lot of connections with George Soros. But $246 million to pro-abortion groups to smear Brett Kavanaugh. Now, this is something that they would have done for Amy Barrett. And they said, well, we can't have Amy Barrett in because they will come after her for being pro-life. Well, they did that for Brett Kavanaugh, and then they also threw the Me Too nonsense in with, and it is nonsense in this particular case, threw that in just for good measure. According to the extensive study by the Media Research Center, 100 of the 544 women's march partners have received a total of $246 million from Soros at last count, reported Laura Ingraham. The partners include things like Planned Parenthood, the Center for Reproductive Rights, the ACLU. Soros is a major donor to Planned Parenthood. Since 2000, he has given them $21 million. I remember that's also just a drop in the bucket because it was last year, about a year ago, October the 18th, 2017, was when he transferred $18 billion to his political groups. They say philanthropy groups. They are politically oriented. $18 billion political fund. Some of this stuff is going to attorney general races, some of them local attorney general races, some of them state attorney general races. We had, and we're going to play for you when we come back, a question given to Christine Ford. Who helped you find your law firm? Who paid for the polygraph? Who paid for all this other stuff? Those are questions that should be asked. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
33% of the population of the U.S., that's 2 out of every 3 people you're looking at, carry Staph aureus bacteria in their nose. 2 out of every 100 actually carry MRSA, which is a methicillin-resistant staph. Now, what you're talking about is the bacteria that actually kills more people than AIDS. And so what we do is we worked really hard, did mass amounts of research, and we found that our gel, your gel, as a first line of defense is amazing. If you put that on a wound, it will actually put an invisible cover on that wound that will last up to 3 days. And it will kill MRSA and regular staph, E. coli, Candida, Aspergillus niger in minutes. So the big deal here is that you can have a kid that gets a scratch on a soccer field and ends up dead or ends up losing a leg because they got a MRSA, a methicillin-resistant staph bacteria, from that soccer field. It's happening in schools, in workout gyms, in the office, on handrails, on telephones, in subways. And this gel that you have access to is the first line of defense for everybody to be able to just gel up and not have to worry about that bacteria. You gel it up and you don't worry about it because we have heal rates of about half the normal time, and you actually have something now in your house where you can easily take care of it.
I think the key is it's super strong and it lasts a long time, because explain why the Super Silver wound gel dressing from InfoWarsLife.com that we private labeled from your top of the line, your top selling product nationwide, why is it so special?
These studies show that our particle goes into your body, washes out in 24 hours with no negative effect on any system in your body.
And many of the others do. Many of the others do bioaccumulate.
Yeah, oh yeah, over the counter, which is what you have available to your people, is so strong that it has direct claims on killing MRSA. You have one of the only products in the U.S. that can make a direct claim on mitigation of a sunburn. You can put it on a bug bite and it'll stop the itch in about probably 3 or 4 minutes. You can put it on any type of burn. What a blessing to have something that you have in your house right now. You don't have to go to the doctor to get this. So hospitals last year had 94,000 life-threatening infections that were caused in the hospitals, and they had no antibiotics that would work against them. That's why they're going back to the silver products, because our silver is proven to kill those. I mean, the two most heinous bugs are methicillin-resistant staph and one called VRE. And VRE is vancomycin-resistant Enterococcus faecalis. Nobody wants to say it, but it will kill you. And so the cool part is this gel kills it in minutes. So you don't have to worry about your kid getting an amputation on a wound, or you don't have to have, a funeral for somebody you love.
And the bottom line is, you guys did years and years and years and years and years and years and years of dozens of peer-reviewed studies. And you finally found out the perfect silver, the most effective, and it's available at InfoWarsStore.com. And you help save the country and defeat the globalists. A 360 win. Everybody needs this in their arsenal. I've stockpiled it because the number one thing threatening us is automobile accidents and flesh-eating bacteria, folks. And you need to get this product. Everybody needs this for their children. Everybody needs this for themselves. Super Silver wound dressing gel at InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com. You're listening to Real News with David Knight.
We meet again. Don't know when, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
Yes, let's go back into the distant past, into the memories that are indelibly etched into the hippocampus of Dr. Ford. She knew that she would meet this young man someday, somewhere. And so she remembered exactly what had happened on that fateful day. But maybe not. I don't know. Nevertheless, it is a strange love account. And the Democrats are willing to burn down the process, burn down the hope that anybody would ever consider to go to Washington. I decades ago, you couldn't pay me to go to Washington. I ran for Congress once, but I would have been mortified if I'd won. I would have resigned on the spot. But no. Let's take a look at some of these statements here. And let's start with this. Let's start with the yearbook, because we did about a week ago. We had the story at InfoWars. And I find it kind of interesting because one of the things that two things I was concerned about at the time about the story's authenticity. One of them was that it came from a new blog account that had never been seen before. And it was like blog of the first or something like that. And it's the only entry that they'd ever had. But it was obvious that maybe it was somebody on the inside that was trying to put some stuff out there. And it was curious, I thought, that while all of Brett Kavanaugh's yearbooks were there, Christine Ford's yearbooks had been scrubbed in advance of these hearings. Because they'd had 45 days that the Democrats had known about this. Plenty of time to clean up social media, to clean up yearbook accounts and so forth. The other thing, too, that I thought was unusual about it was the fact that you had all of these statements being made. These statements that are being made in Christine Ford's yearbook by her and the people that she was hanging out with and the pictures they were taking. So over the top, I thought, how could that ever be in a high school yearbook? I mean, these people are only 10 years behind me, but it's like, how could that happen? How did we get that debauched in just 10 years from when I was in high school? None of that stuff would ever pass an adult advisor for the yearbook. Or as they point out in the Zero Hedge article, there were ads in the yearbook that were paid for by parents. Parents are going to pay for ads talking about sex parties, alcohol parties, and what they're doing when the parents aren't home and so forth, and how they're all going around in a drunken haze and hooking up with everybody all the time. Parents are going to put ads in that? The school is going to allow that to be printed as their yearbook? Yeah, evidently up in Maryland where these people are hanging out, that was the case in the 1980s. And Brett Kavanaugh, as part of his hearing, was saying, some of my friends and I are looking at this stuff and we can't believe the things that we're saying. He said they were being pushed by the person who was putting the yearbook together, saw himself doing a combination of Animal House and Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and he was pushing us all to say that kind of stuff, and that's what we all did. But that was going on at the two different schools, and yet it was her yearbook that was scrubbed. Now, we reported that. We showed the story that was there, picked up by a couple of other people, but for the most part, the mainstream media has stayed away from that story. Do not talk about that. Do not talk about it. And of course, the Republicans have stayed away from this as well. Before the hearing yesterday, there was a story on Zero Hedge. She will not make a good witness. And there were people inside the GOP. They were talking off the record, and they said, the Democrats are going to use Brett Kavanaugh's high school yearbook. And I started out the program where you had a Democrat senator spending his valuable time. This is why they can't do budgets until the last minute. This is why they can't do anything of any importance, because they got to spend all their time grandstanding on this kind of nonsense. Haranguing Brett Kavanaugh over some slang for farting, for flatulence, as Brett Kavanaugh said. And he says, sure, you want to talk about flatulence, written comments, jokes, written when by some 16-year-olds 35 years ago in a high school yearbook. Okay, let's go for it, Senator. And that senator deserved that sarcasm. But of course, they're not going to go there with her yearbook. Not at all. They're afraid of it. So we have her yearbooks, said a GOP committee staffer. We have her yearbooks, and she will not make a good witness. See, I think what happened is they got her yearbooks, but they are absolutely afraid of this Me Too stuff to put that out there because it'll look like they're attacking her. So they release it through a blog, an anonymous blog, and hope that people pick it up. But nobody really picked it up except for us, one or two other sites. The source, who spoke on condition of anonymity, noted that the annual class books feature a photo of an underage Ford attending at least one party alongside a caption boasting of girls passing out from binge drinking. Her yearbooks also openly reference sexually promiscuous behavior by the girls and showing pictures of them, I would add, doing that. And again, you can see all this stuff, and we reported this over a week ago, including targeting boys that were at the school that Kavanaugh attended. But, and this is the key thing, because again, now I'm absolutely convinced that that yearbook is authentic and that the GOP is afraid to use it openly, that they leaked it through that blog. So this could be risky, said the congressional GOP staffer. This could be too risky for us to use against her. That is a minefield, he said, especially given the Me Too movement. And so what we know is that she was a popular cheerleader at the time. She was immersed in the alcohol-fueled party that they criticized Brett Kavanaugh for because they've got his yearbook. But hers was the same way. The same way. Different school. No stranger, they said, to keg parties. She wasn't either in the D.C. or the bar scene in Maryland and Delaware. Ford was known as a party girl on the Delaware shore during summer breaks. Another source with direct knowledge of the congressional investigation said. Classmates said the former cheerleader, who was known as Chrissy, was part of the underage drinking tradition that was no secret among Maryland prep schools in the early 1980s when the drinking age was 18. And apparently it was fine for all the schools to brag about it in their yearbooks. Her own school yearbook, in which the parents took out paid ads. Just think about it. The parents took out paid ads in this. And this is how low America has sunk. The parents take out ads in yearbooks that celebrate boys and beer and pictured beer bottles and beer cans and scenes of boys and girls drinking at parties. At one published photo of Ford and other girls at a Halloween party, along with a caption, boasted of passing out after playing quarters and other binge drinking games. Her father was president of the local country club. The girls bragged in one section, the 10th grade taught us how to party. The 10th grade. She was not the wholesome Catholic girl they're trying to portray her as. Ford and her attorney, her advisor, Ricky Seidman, a former Clinton and Obama White House official, and of course a Democrat operative who has a lot of connections to Soros, was also an advisor to Anita Hill, who didn't believe Juanita Broaddrick, wouldn't give her a hearing. They've argued that Kavanaugh and the other boys from Georgetown Prep were in fact aggressively targeting Ford. Well, maybe that's not what happened. They also note that neither Ford's parents nor her two siblings have come out in support of Ford. They did not sign a family letter of support circulated by her husband. Some of his family did, but notably absent were the family members who would have known what happened. And also notably absent is any verification
Thanks for
of any
stopping
people
in. Have a
that
great
Ford
day.
said were at that event. We're going to have the clips from the hearing yesterday. We're going to take a look at what she actually had to say, in case you're interested.
Super Silver Wound Gel uses Silver Salt technology. There's been extensive research on Silver Salt technology. This research includes 20-plus safety reports and test series, as well as the first ever double-blind FDA-cleared human ingestion toxicity study. This formula is 24 ppm. That's 32 ppm version is FDA cleared as a prescription medical device. Similar products sell for $40 or more. It's one of the only OTC products that direct claims against MRSA. You don't want that. And VRE, two of the most deadly forms of bacteria that can cause infection. Great for first and second degree burns, including sunburn. The Super Silver Wound Gel is essential armor for your wounds. The barrier protection can last up to 3 days on the skin, helping to eliminate the chance of infection. It's perfect for athletes of all ages in all areas of sports. Super Silver Wound Gel.
Well, Eric Bowling is here in studio for our bare knuckles match. He already beat me up during the break, so he wins. No, but seriously, censored, demonized for no reason like everybody else that's effective. We'll talk about what it's like to be out of Fox, but more importantly, launching something truly free on CRTV with a politically incorrect name, America. So it's good to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much.
We ran into each other at Trump Hotel.
Correct. I was leaving. You were coming back. I think you were coming back from your little tiff with Marco Rubio, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I caught you at the bottom of the stairs, and I said, "Hey, Alex Jones, let's talk a little bit." I refreshed your memory that about 5 years ago, you and I had a Twitter war. I think we were going to fight on the corner, and I said, "I'll tell you what, Jones, I'll meet you on the corner of Park and Lex at 4 o'clock today." And you're like, "Okay, I'll be there." There's no corner of Park and Lex. I just want to point that out.
How can we, less than 2 years in, not be thanking our lucky stars like Trump is a giant leprechaun that cracks buckets of gold?
Well, he is doing very well in the economy. He's doing well on security. When's the last time we heard?
But just say it. He's a giant leprechaun the size of King Kong that sprays fountains of gold out of his ass.
Well, that's your assessment of him. I think he's a brilliant businessman who brought that to Washington, D.C. There's a number that's floating around here. I will tell you, never in my lifetime have I seen growth rate exceed unemployment rate by this wide of a mark. It's just insane. When you're 3.9% unemployment and 4.2% growth, that is perfection in the economy. It's fully employed in a robust growing economy. The guy's he's doing everything right on the economy and on security. Is he rough? Is he vulgar? Is he rough around the edges? Is he a bulldozer, not a scalpel? True. Yes, but I'll take the other two.
Well, you need a wrecking ball to get rid of the globalists. But if you look at all those graphs that his chief economic advisor put out 2 days ago, he gets elected and they all go straight up, showing that we were artificially being suppressed. I mean, the Federal Reserve printed $5.5 trillion for Obama, nothing for Trump. Well, people say, oh, is he real? If he doesn't do this, his name is mud. If he does it, he's bigger than George Washington. He'll be on the money 500 years from now on Mars.
Look, so all these people that when they're afraid of him and they're worried he's going to get too big, and this whole new Trump form of conservatism is growing in Washington, D.C., they all push back. They all start to say he's losing his facilities. He's losing his mind. The man is sharp as a tack.
I was going to say, exactly what Trump's called me like at 10 o'clock at night. I'm like tired. He's like smooth, like he's a voice actor that never made a mistake. And it's like also, I'm like, I said a 5-minute conversation and he didn't mumble one time. I'm like, this is a senile person? You didn't nap?
Nope. Nap. Dude, I don't sleep much.
I'm joking. All right. Now, you're pretty muscular guy. I'm a little bit afraid over here.
Park and Lex.
That's right. Wait, we'll do the Twitter video. You want to trade punches?
Which video?
We'll do a Twitter video. Trade punches. I bet you'll break my arm. You want to do it? You're a hot shot. Pretty tough guy over there. I'm telling you, he's in good shape. You're listening to Real News with David Knight. Live from Austin, Texas, it's David Knight.
Welcome back. We're going to take a little bit of a break from the postmortem of the Kavanaugh soap opera that we saw yesterday in the Senate. And let's talk about some other serious issues that really affect us that are not being talked about by the government, and that is the massive power of corporations to censor us. And we've got a great example of this here being done by Amazon. I wanted to talk to the Texas-based publisher and give you an idea of how Amazon is doing it, because we've seen what Facebook and Twitter and Google are doing. Google will hide your information, shadow ban you in that way. We've seen shadow banning being done by Facebook and by Twitter. Then we've seen outright banning of this. Maybe that's going to be coming from Amazon next. Actually, they have shut down some people's books. They actually, a few years ago, in a test run, they thought it would be funny to make 1984, the audiobook or the online book, disappear from people's devices. Just flush it down the memory hole. Maybe that was a test. Maybe it was a mistake. I thought it was curious that it was 1984 that they flushed down the memory hole. So maybe that was just an advanced test or revelation of method or whatever. But now I want to talk to this Texas-based publisher, David Thomas Roberts. He's a naturalized Texan, he says, and he has published his own political thrillers, Patriots of Treason, first published back in 2012. He had a lot of demand for that, so he's done some sequels, and he was also publishing a book about Texit, why and how Texas will leave the Union. I talked about this back in May of 2016 when they were doing Brexit. You had Boris Johnson come out and he said, here's 8 reasons why we should leave the European Union. And so I would play Boris Johnson giving his reason. I'd say, well, that applies in Texas as well, even to a greater extent. We're sending, for example, even more money to the federal government than England or the UK was sending to the EU and so forth. So I went down the list and said, yeah, we should have a Texit. So I absolutely agree with that. But let's talk about the tactics that are being done here. And let's talk to David Thomas Roberts. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Roberts.
David, thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about what is happening here with Amazon. Tell us about the tactics and the way that they are, in your opinion, banning and censoring the sale of this book, Texit.
Well, it's somewhat, David, of a shadow ban, so I'll explain this. I think the first thing your viewers need to know is that when a book goes through the distribution process, when it goes to book retailers, they're always on consignment. Those book retailers can return the books at any time and don't have to pay for them. So I keep that in the back of your mind as I explain this. Well, Texit, which is it's an extremely well-written book. If you go to Amazon and look at Texit by Daniel Miller, you'll see it's got well over 100 5-star reviews. In fact, every review he's got is 5-star. It's a well thought out, well-written book about the reasons for why in Texas should and will leave the Union at some point. So when it was in pre-release, it came out May 22nd. For the 30, 45 days before that, it was #1 And we have screenshots of that, but we have the number one on Amazon in 3 genres, 3 categories in political categories. Number one in pre-sales. And then for several weeks after it was released, it remained number one in those 3 categories. So the book had been selling very, very well. Now, we noticed that Amazon all of a sudden slapped a restriction on there that you had to be a Prime member in order to be able to purchase it. So you had to spend $119 or whatever it is with Amazon to actually be a Prime member to have the ability to order the book. Our distributor, who's been in book sales for 40 years, had never seen that before. We can't find another book that Amazon.
No, I've never heard of that. I've never heard that you have to become a Prime member in order to buy a book. I mean, you become a Prime member so that you don't pay shipping on each and everything that you do. And then they also throw in the fact that you can watch Amazon movies that they finance and so forth. But it's to save shipping. It's to watch the movies. It's not to buy any products. I've never seen any products, books or otherwise, that you have to be a Prime member in order to purchase.
Well, that was step one for them. Step two was they limited the quantities. Now, of all the books that we've had over the years, Texas was unusual because the average sales per book was averaging about 2.3 books for every time somebody pressed the buy button, which is unusual. And what was happening is that people were buying this book, giving it to elected officials, giving it to friends and family, so that the unit count per sale was much higher than industry average, a lot higher than industry average. And then they started restricting, you could only buy 4 books at a time. And that restriction has fluctuated differently from day to day, but there's always a restriction on how many books you can buy. And remember that they do just-in-time shipping. So if I went on and ordered a book that had 50 copies and there's only 20 of it in Amazon's warehouse, they have the ability to fill that order and having it drop shipped by the publisher, by the wholesalers. There's other ways to get that book to somebody so they don't have to wait on it. Or at least you get a note from Amazon saying it's back ordered, it's on its way. But Amazon restricted the sales. And then the last thing they did was they dropped the price to the wholesale level. Now, let me explain what that does. First of all, they're giving up any profit on the book. They dropped it to $11 and some change. And what that does is, for all the other booksellers, all the other retailers out there, Barnes & Noble, everybody else, who looks at what Amazon's doing from a pricing standpoint, it doesn't pay for them to take up their valuable retail shelf space to put that book on their shelves and match Amazon's price. So essentially, they don't stock it. So what Amazon's done by doing that, because they're an 800-pound gorilla, they sell more books than anybody. What they've done is they've discouraged the complete ordering of inventory to stock on shelves from any brick and mortar bookstore.
That is amazing. So just to recap, they've done 3 things. First of all, you have to be a Prime member in order to buy this product. And I've never seen that with any product, certainly not with a book. And then they put a limit in terms of the number of books that you can buy. And that has been varying from, putting a cap of 4 on there, because you point out a lot of people are saying, we want to pass this around to family, want to pass it around to politicians. And then the last thing is to cut the price down to the wholesale level and just dump it out there, and to make it so that nobody else is going to sell this anywhere. I mean, this is predatory practice that we're seeing from the largest retailer out there.
Yeah, and I'm the biggest free market guy you'll ever meet, and people should be able to price things they want to. But Amazon's getting close to a monopoly. They are the 800-pound gorilla. And in full disclosure, I own a lot of Amazon stock. So as a stockholder, I'm extremely disappointed. The answers that we get from Amazon when you can get somebody live it haven't made any sense. On the one hand, they said, well, the book didn't sell well. I said, well, why then would you put the required Amazon Prime membership on a book that's not selling well? That will discourage it even further.
Yeah, and if it's not selling well, why would you need to limit the number of copies that people can buy at any given time?
None of it, David, makes any sense at all. And so we started getting some national exposure on this in the last 2 weeks. And one of the things that they've done recently, and I haven't checked today, but as of recently today, they have actually removed the Prime membership requirement, but there's still the wholesale prices on there, and still there's the limitations on quantities. And now, even though we know for a fact, because we know when books ship from the warehouse to Amazon, we know they have the books in stock. When you order it today, even as a Prime member, as of yesterday when I checked, I wouldn't get the copy till October 16th. So none of it makes any sense, and you can't get any explanations from Amazon. It could be just a rogue Amazon employee who's decided that this isn't a politically correct book. It could be, this started happening around the time that you saw all the so-called collusion with the tech giants that affected Alex and InfoWars. This is not, I promise you, I haven't figured it out yet, but it's all connected somehow.
We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back. We've got to take a quick break here. But just to put this out there, Jeff Bezos, of course, is from Texas. He's probably got an opinion about this himself. And I'm sure that if it was showing at #1, that got their attention. He's also somebody who now seems to really love how things are playing out in Washington. And somebody who spent some pocket change of his to get the Washington Post for a mere $250 million, which is pocket change. And we'll be right back. Stay with us. David Thomas Roberts.
Okay, so I have a gift here from the folks at InfoWarsStore.com. They wanted to thank me for getting the InfoWars t-shirts on the Rangers game for millions of people to see. So they just brought me a gift. I don't even know what this is. Let's see what's going on. Wait a second. No! I got it! It's a Trump Medusa shirt. Look at that, guys! Ah! I got the Trump Medusa shirt. What's that? There's more in there? Oh, it's a George Washington. Wow. I was not expecting this, really. Look at that one. That'll trigger somebody real good. Oh, yeah. Wow. What? I'm like a kid on Christmas today. Man. I want to thank the folks at InfoWarsStore.com. This is amazing. I was not expecting this.
Right now is massive rampage force. Go ahead, Alex.
Last night I was on with Laura Ingraham, and I done the Alex Jones show yesterday. I done the War Room. She's not on until 9:40 Central. That's 10:40 Eastern. I was exhausted. I popped 2 Brain Force Plus, and I was good as new. I mean, it really is mentally stabilizing, mentally energizing. Tonight I'm on with Tucker Carlson. The same thing. I'm going to put in a full day here at InfoWars. I'm going to go on with Tucker tonight. Thank goodness for this great product. This is my all-time favorite because it's so effective and it doesn't give you that jacked up energy drink feeling. You can sleep with it. And when you stack it with the red pill, the mind-body combination, that is the best. That supercharges your energy, your vitality. This is the best combination I have found. And it really works. It's the best mineral vitamin combination I have found, and I've tried them all. I wasted a lot of money on old foods, believe me.
Whether you're looking to boost the benefits of our fish oil formula or just want an alternative, InfoWars Life has the formula for you. Ultimate Krill Oil is a powerhouse formula that takes advantages of the EPA, DHA, and omega-3s found in our high-quality, ultra-pure krill oil concentrate. Containing powerful antioxidants such as astaxanthin and omega-3s, Ultimate Krill Oil can help you experience the benefits of fish oil with less required DHA and EPA. This incredible formula can help your body in many ways, including supporting heart health, joint health, and cognitive health, aiding in regulating fat metabolism, helping to maintain cognitive function, and more. And while other krill oil formulas may chemically modify their formulas, we're giving you the benefits of a simple formula that contains unmodified, high-quality krill oil concentrate, paired with our Ultimate Fish Oil or used separately. It's time to see what krill oil can do for you with Ultimate Krill Oil, now available at InfoWarsStore.com.
Hey, by now I'm sure that most of you know that there are always big discounts and unbelievable savings on a regular basis at InfoWarsStore.com. But check this out. Now you can earn even bigger discounts at the InfoWars store by using our Patriot Points reward program. Hey, you like the sound of that? It's our way of saying thank you, America, for supporting the InfoWars. Look, earning points is easy. All you got to do is go to InfoWarsStore.com and click on the Patriot Points button and sign up today. Spend $1, earn 5 points. It's that easy. So you're starting to get the picture here? This is a rewards program that gives you powerful discounts for buying your favorite products at the InfoWars store. So check it out. the Patriot Points Reward Program at InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139. Yep.
You're listening to Real News with David Knight.
Politicians say more taxes will solve everything. And the band played on.
Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and I'm talking to David Thomas Roberts. He is a publisher, and we're talking about the efforts of Amazon to shut down a book, a political book, that was, when it first came out, was #1 on Amazon. Then it got their attention, and they did some very unusual things. As we pointed out in the last segment, they made it mandatory that you had to become a Prime member, which is a large annual fee. It's $119 per year. You had to get Prime membership before you could buy this product. As I said, I've never seen this for anything. A book, nothing. I've never seen anything that you had to be Prime. You get Prime because you want to get free shipping for the year, or you want to be able to get free shipping and watch their movies or so forth. But you had to become a Prime member in order to buy this product. Then they put a limit on the number of the books that people could buy, because some people were buying multiple copies to use this. Again, this is a political book. They were trying to educate legislators, family members, and so forth. They're buying several copies of this. So they put a limit on it and then said, well, it's not selling well. And then they reduced the price to wholesale cost, which makes it unprofitable for other book retailers to sell this. And so the question is, I guess, Mr. Roberts, why they would do this. And I just want to add the fact that you had a very big selling book that you wrote back in 1997, Unemployable, How to Be Successfully Unemployed Your Entire Life. That may be what we're all looking at if these giant corporations have their way and control everything, because it's not really a free market. I had a situation as a small mom and pop retailer. My wife and I had a chain of 6 stores, and we had to compete for over a decade, about 13 years, against a big box retailer who was funded with money that they get off of Wall Street. They never turned a profit over that entire period of time, but they had a habit of opening giant stores right in front of other small retailers. And we've seen this in industry after industry, you know, whether it's Staples putting Dunder Mifflin out of business in the office or whatever. I mean, this is a pattern of behavior that we've seen in one industry after the other. And now you got Amazon, which is out there in the entire retail market, doing this in a far worse way than Walmart ever did to small stores. How do we pull this in? What do we do with this?
Well, and let me add to the difficulty. You know, we're a small publisher. We're a boutique publisher. Most of our authors are Texas authors. Not all of them, but most of them are. And so, you know, to open this fight up with Amazon puts us at serious risk, because they could just decide, well, we're not going to handle any of Defiance Press and publishing books anymore. And so we would lose the #1 outlet that we have to sell books for. So
and that's the problem. They own the market. They are the market.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. And so, you know, we took some risk and went public with this, and because you can't get any answers from Amazon. And then even talking to, we've actually talked to the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who's taken an interest in this. And, you know, in the meantime, there's still these restrictions on that book. And, you know, it's whether your argument is for what's argued in the book, it really is irrelevant, although it is relevant from the standpoint that we know why they're trying to shut this down is because it's not a politically correct book. It actually makes sense. And somebody forgot to tell Amazon that people have the God-given right of self-determination if they so choose. So we're very disappointed in their actions, and still to this day haven't got a phone call back from Amazon.
Well, and this gets to something that conservatives and libertarians are struggling with, and they need to come to terms with this. At what point do we lose a free market? At what point does it become so rigged that it isn't a free market, and all of this stuff about, you know, private property and everything doesn't really apply? And again, I don't like regulation. It usually doesn't work. And one of the regulation things that doesn't seem to work historically has been antitrust. That has really been kind of the proposition that's been put up by some people for handling the social media censorship. I think there is a better solution to this, and I've only seen this mentioned once or twice, and I've talked about it a lot after I saw it on Breitbart. A 1946 decision, Supreme Court decision, said that even if you own the public square, if it's privately owned, it was a situation where one company owned the entire town, and they told a Jehovah's Witness who was, the lady wanted to go around and pass out literature. They said, we don't want your literature here. Get out of here. We own the property. You're gone, which is what all of these giant corporations are doing. It's what they're doing on social media. It's what apparently is happening with Amazon. For whatever their reasons are, they're essentially doing this. It's very, very unusual. It requires that you have to be Prime, to put a limit on the number of books that they can do and so forth. That is really crazy. But they said, the Supreme Court said, no, if you own the public square, it's still the public square. And even if it's privately owned, you can't censor this kind of speech, and you can't censor products off of this. If they get a monopoly situation like that, I think that's the way that needs to be handled. And that's essentially what we have now in social media, and it's what we're getting in the retail space as well.
Yeah, and obviously I have legal options, but in talking to various different attorneys on this issue, it's like, do you really want to go pick a fight with a $3 trillion corporation? And I've been in lawsuits in the past. I had one that lasted 15 years, and I was a plaintiff on, and it consumes your life. And so we just want to publish great books, and from great authors, and now I got to go have this fight with Amazon. So, but it is the public square. I'm familiar with that Supreme Court decision you're talking about. But the other thing I want to weave in here too is a lot of this timing came from the Democrat Ellison out of Minnesota, when he started saying that the Southern Poverty Law Center should be looking at it, should be the litmus test of whether Amazon publishes books that come from their so-called hate groups that are on the SPLC list, which, right now for conservatives like me, if you're on the SPLC list, that's actually a badge of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Yeah. So what we're seeing is the social media censorship, shutting that down. And again, as I've said many times, that is not shutting down the press. That is shutting down the free speech of the people, because it's the people being able to pass along what they agree with, what they see, and to send that out there. Of course, it also does, put a chilling effect on what they're able to see and hear, but it is essentially shutting down their speech. Now we've got the European Union coming out and saying, we're going to apply these hate speech laws to the press, and we're going to start doing the same kind of stuff that they're doing on social media. So that's coming directly after the press. And so is this. If you got the Southern Poverty Law Center coming out and saying, we don't like certain kinds of books being put out there. That's where this all began with the Nazis. And then we're not going back to Goodwin's rule here. I mean, this truly is a Nazi tactic to say we're going to start burning books down. And they're now have influence with the largest retailer. But we've actually, we talk about this being a public square. And again, one of the reasons we know that we can't fight these guys in court, just as you pointed out. I mean, he's got so much money that he would only personally, just from a personal standpoint, he makes enough money that he could have paid for the $250 million that he spent on Washington Post. He could have done that with just 30 hours worth of wages, for example. That's how quickly he makes money. So you're going to go up against that kind of guy in court. They could delay you for multiple lifetimes playing legal tricks. So we've got to get to the politicians and say, look, Jack Dorsey in his testimony said 5 times that Twitter is a public square. So let's apply the Supreme Court law that is already there against that.
I agree. And in the meantime, it looks like we're going to have to do, I think what you guys are having to do is find ultimate ways to get to consumers, ultimate ways to get viewers and readers. And, it'll cause the invention of other means of getting the message out. But it's a battle. It's a daily battle. I know you guys have had it worse than we have, but it's definitely an issue, and it continues to be.
Yeah, we're going to have to innovate, and we're going to have to transcend these people. We could also, it's a good thing that you're reaching out to the Texas Attorney General, because we do need to have some help from these politicians. As I've said many times, when it comes to banning books, which is what they're doing to you, when it comes to banning what people are able to share, that's the free speech of the public, or when it's coming to banning the press, which is what they're doing to InfoWars, when it comes to all of those different things, we need to say that censorship is a bad idea. And it's a bad idea if it's done by the world's largest corporations, by a handful of people, 3 or 4 people that own so much information. And we create governments to protect us, to protect our individual liberties, like free speech. And the governments need to step up and do their job.
Oh, I didn't even tell you, David, too. Recently, last week, they acted like if you go in there and try to order the book from Amazon, try to order text it shows it was only available from third-party sellers, which made you think that they weren't carrying the book anymore. Now, that was like that for about 3 or 4 days. Again, we have these strange anomalies with this particular book that we don't have any. Listen, my books are very impolitically correct. The ones that I write, my last one, Purge on the Potomac. We have a lot of politically incorrect books, but this one in particular has really been attacked by Amazon. So who knows?
Well, Jeff Bezos is playing that Washington deep state game. He bought the Washington Post to turn it into a political blog. He's got a $10 billion contract coming from the Pentagon alone. He's selling data services and all this other kind of stuff. He is deeply embedded in all that. He would not like to see Texas leave and not pour that money into that money pit anymore. Thank you so much, David Thomas Roberts, and it's Defiance Press, and the book is Texit. See what they don't want you to see.
For months and months and months, CNN, BuzzFeed, and others lobbied to have Alex Jones removed from social media. He was removed from basically all the major social media platforms apart from Twitter. And then they said, oh, you're not being banned. You still have a platform on Twitter. You still have an app in the App Store. Boom, banned by Twitter, banned by the App Store. Oh, but you still have a website. You still have InfoWars Store. You still have a shop front. And then what do we see? Washington Post. Oh my God, traffic to Alex Jones's InfoWars store has increased by 50%. Maybe now we should look at that all the way down the line. They literally want to sabotage people's right to commerce. They will not stop, which is why we need your support right now by getting the products at InfoWarsStore.com. And again, we're not funded by giant fat checks from George Soros like Media Matters is to fund these deplatforming campaigns. We're not funded by Gulf state dictatorships like CNN is. We're only funded by you by getting the products at InfoWarsStore.com.
What are champions made of? Here's a man who can show you.
888-253-3139, 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139 is the InfoWars Store hotline. 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139 is the InfoWars Store hotline. 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 888-253-3139 is the InfoWars Store. InfoWarsStore.com is simply the best. InfoWarsStore.com beats out all the rest. 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139 is the InfoWars Store hotline. 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. That's InfoWarsStore.com.
You're listening to Real News with David Knight. Waging war on corruption. It's David Knight.
Welcome back. We're just talking to the publisher, Defiance Press, talking about the unusual methods that are being taken by Amazon against a politically conservative group. Southern Poverty Law Center is out there saying there's certain groups that we don't want you publishing books from. So they said this book, Texit, you can't buy it unless you have an Amazon Prime membership. I've never seen anything like that before. They put restrictions on the number of books that you can buy and other things like that. And so the question is, why would they do this? Well, you've got Amazon, AT&T, and Google are pushing Congress to pass an online privacy bill so that they can preempt a stronger state law that will be coming out of California, possibly. Now, we've seen this type of behavior done by big corporations before. We've seen this with GMOs, for example. You had local legislation that was, in many cases, done in rural areas where you had farmers who wanted to grow more profitable, more healthy, organic food. And they said, we don't want the GMO food. We don't want the Monsanto and the Roundup and the Canberra drift and so forth. We don't want that to happen around here because it's contaminating our organic fields. And so we're going to ban it in this area. And they came together in Hawaii and California, many other jurisdictions. And this was happening one at a time. And so all of a sudden, the big guys like Monsanto and so forth, they go to Washington and they say, we're going to stop this. And we're going to go to Washington and we're going to get the DARK Act. That was our nickname for it. And we're going to push this through so that we're going to preempt any local legislation against that. So that appears to be what Amazon, AT&T, and Google are doing now about privacy. As people are waking up in certain jurisdictions and saying, we would like to protect our privacy and we're going to do certain things about it, they go to Washington to shut that down. Now, that's a violation of the 10th Amendment. But they've done this over and over again, not just with GMOs. They have done it in the telecommunications industry. And this is something that we're going to be seeing in the fight over 5G as well. Because there were already a lot of studies, and I've talked about this briefly in the past, a lot of studies talking about concerns with antenna clusters when cell phones were first rolled out in the mid-90s. There were a lot of studies that have been done all over the world, various government studies. The biggest one was done in Poland, looking at the health effects of people in the military. It was about 140,000 people a year, and it stretched over, I think, just going from memory here, 13, 14 years that they did it. A massive database, and they documented increased rates of certain problems, certain types of cancers and other things, organs being affected. And so there was an ever-increasing body of evidence showing that cell phone radiation, towers, and people who are living or working in close proximity to those were suffering significant increase in health risks. So the response to that by the industry was to go to Washington and shut it down from Washington. They passed the 1996 Telecommunications Act during the Bill Clinton administration, and they said nobody can object to or block cell phone towers on the basis of health concerns. You can only oppose those if you say that it's going to be an eyesore and it's going to affect your property value. And so that is now coming into play as they're talking about putting 5G antennas about every 50 feet or so, because it's operating at a very high frequency. This is qualitatively different than what we've had before. But even though it is a lower power signal, it's not that much lower in power when you are that close to the antenna and where they're putting these antennas everywhere. And of course, we've seen this before with the vaccine immunity given to the big pharmaceutical companies back in 1986, when so many people were suing because of death and damage from vaccines. They gave them immunity. So we see over and over again, as people start to wake up to a situation like this, we see the big corporations like Amazon, AT&T, and Google going to the federal government to stop what is being done at the state and local level in violation of the 9th and 10th Amendment. That is why Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. That is why he has multi-billion-dollar contracts from the Pentagon, just like Google and just like AT&T and so forth. They're deeply embedded in this. That power that is there is the source of the corruption and the money.
Just a month ago, that Nazi collaborator, anti-American, gun-grabbing, anti-Christian piece of filth, George Soros, bought an even bigger interest in PayPal. But sure enough, they just told us today that we're going to be banned in 10 days because we're hateful, because we don't support radical Islam and open borders and the rest of it. Ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever, you supporting InfoWars is changing the world. And yeah, they're getting rid of PayPal, but we have other ways to process your credit cards. Your financial support of us is literally buying war bonds in the 21st century war for humanity. So I want to commend you. I want to thank you. We got great products you already need, but without you, they will win. And Soros and Obama and Hillary see the shutdown of InfoWars as a referendum on breaking the American spirit. So let's not let these jerks do it. I'm committed to the end, but I want to win. So please support InfoWarsStore.com today.
You found it. It's the real news. Live from the InfoWars.com studios in Austin, Texas, it's your host, David Knight.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at what Chrissy Ford had to say yesterday. Again, this is going back and straining her challenged memory on some of the details that are coming along. Other people have had the same criticism that I did as I watched this hearing yesterday with you live. I said this person they brought in as a special counsel to do the questioning, is a woman who's had experience in cases involving sexual misconduct allegations and so forth. But the line of questioning that she had was so arcane and so obscure in the details, and she did not draw conclusions for this. And I really found it to be very ineffective, because she would go in for 5 minutes and then they'd go to a Democrat senator and they would lay this stuff out in a very emotional, visceral way and say, aren't you really upset about this? Don't you have your feelings hurt and so forth? Are you afraid to, go out the door anymore of your house and so forth? And oh, yes, I am, Senator. Yes, I am. And it completely eradicated all of this detail. So because the lady never really drew this conclusion, said, okay, so you said this, but then that's not possible, is it? Or you said this, but all the other witnesses said that other thing. She never went to that point, never made that conclusion. One of the things that I think is interesting about the fact, all this talk about the delay of the hearing, because she said she was afraid to fly. We're going to get into what she actually said at the hearing, because they questioned this. Are you really afraid to fly? Have you never flown before? And as I'm looking at this, yes, those kinds of contradictions and doublespeak and so forth, that is important. And it is important because it does show that the real motivation of all this is really just to delay the confirmation of Kavanaugh, to hope that they can run the clock out. And all of those things are true, but there's another aspect of this as well. And as I'm looking at that, I thought, why can't we be having a legitimate questioning of a Supreme Court judge over the TSA and the Fourth Amendment, rather than whether or not Chrissy Ford is afraid to fly on a plane when she actually has flown all these different times? And so why are we doing that aspect? Well, you know why we're doing that aspect. Because both the Republicans and the Democrats want the TSA. They want these kind of controls, and they don't care about your individual liberty. They want to treat you like slaves, and they're going to distract you with these circuses like we saw yesterday. And so we're going to get into the circus, and we're going to take a look at some of the details here. But let's start first with some of the things that maybe they might have asked her about. The fact that the House committee, Republicans on the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, have done a study on the TSA. They have ranked it at the bottom of 339 agencies. It is ranked 336 out of 339 agencies. And what they found was not only are they harassing the travelers, but the TSA themselves are getting harassed by the TSA itself. So it's a whole, and this is what's wrong with travel right now. Because as we got the TSA being harassed by their supervisors, and then they go out and they harass the passengers and the flight attendants and the pilots. And the flight attendants and the pilots say, man, I'm gonna do this too. It's the same thing that we always saw in East Germany. I remember reading the account. I tried to get the woman to come on, but she wouldn't come on because we're InfoWars. And she is a socialist. And I say that, and I'm not making an exaggeration. She went to live in East Germany when the Stasi was in control. And she wanted to live in a communist country. She, unlike these people who say, if Trump wins, I'm going to leave the country. No. She wanted to go live in a Venezuela type or authoritarian state like East Germany. And she went there. She found a husband there and so forth. And then after the wall fell and people started going through the Stasi files, she was surprised to see that she and her husband figured prominently in the Stasi files, as did everybody. They were all being spied on by the government. You had one half of the people spying on the other half of the people, and then that half of the people were spying on the other half. Everybody was spying on everybody else. Now they have computers to do that and artificial intelligence to do that to you. And that's what's really scary, because there's no longer even any conscience that has to be seared like they did with the East German secret police. The computers don't have a conscience. That's why they are creating the artificial intelligence. That should be very concerning for us, both in terms of surveillance as well as the soldiers that they're creating, the robot soldiers that'll be operated under artificial intelligence. They don't have a conscience and they don't care about human life, but they will take direction from a few people at the top. And what she was talking about was, she said the people that were there when she lived in East Germany, were so nice to you as an individual. But she said you could talk to somebody who was living next door to you in the tiny, teeny micro apartment, that's the other thing that they've got planned for us. As part of the smart cities, your micro apartment is awaiting you. Once they can run you out of the rural and suburban areas and lock you into the cities and take away your ability to travel and to own a private vehicle and so forth, they're going to lock you in the micro apartments that you can't afford. But going back to East Germany, the person in the micro apartment next to you might be just the nicest person in that capacity. But if you go down to the shop where they worked as a clerk in a butcher store, get ready for a power trip. They're going to make you stand in line. They're going to give you the full Department of Motor Vehicle treatment because that's their power. And they get worse in terms of doing that because everybody is doing that to them. So this is a whole cycle of things that go around. And so we can see that in the TSA. This report is filled with what I've already observed of human nature in this woman's report about what East Germany was like. People would be nice and normal until they got into their job, and then they turned into officious monsters on a power trip. I have power, banging their chest. That's one of the famous clips we used to play here at InfoWars all the time. Some guy talking about how he'd been abused by the TSA. And he goes, this woman looks at me and bangs her chest with her fist and says, I have power. I have power. Yeah, I can believe that she actually said that. I've seen that. And you have seen it too. And where does it come from? And where do these, we keep seeing the stewardesses on the airplanes acting this way, getting in your face, calling the police to arrest you over the most minor offenses. Why? Because as this escalates and everybody in their official capacity has power. I've got power. I've been oppressed by the TSA when I had to go through that line. Now I am the stewardess. And I'm going to tell you what to do. Shut up and sit down and buckle your seatbelt and turn off your phone, even though it doesn't have anything to do with interfering with the telemetrics of the plane. It can't possibly interfere with that. They're on different frequencies, the powers, and now they're starting to say, well, okay, we'll let you do that. It was never a problem. Never a problem. If it was a problem, they would have never been able to get off the ground because there's cell signals that are very strong coming from everywhere while they're on the ground. How do they ever get the plane off the ground if that was it's patently absurd? But it's a power trip. It doesn't have anything to do about powering off your phone. It's about powering up their power trip. And so what's going on at the TSA? As Zero Hedge points out, the House committee finds toxic misconduct, abysmal worker satisfaction at the TSA. The House Committee on Oversight of Government Reform shows that no matter how much we hate the TSA, the employees that work at TSA hate it even more. The report describes the TSA as a toxic and abysmal workplace environment, just like the travel environment is becoming on planes. I mean, toxic and abysmal. And that's the attitudes. It literally is toxic with some of the air that is leaking through the systems on these dilapidated planes. And of course, they're slowing them down to save money and so forth. But getting back to the TSA, this is the culture allows the misconduct of senior officials to go unpunished. Whistleblowers are faced with either retaliation or involuntary reassignment to other locations. The committee started its probe back in 2018. It was spurred on by credible allegations of wrongdoing, but they claimed that the host of problems the committee found could be attributable to low employee morale. Bullying. What comes around goes around. And this is a toxic environment that is spreading out of the airports and out of the planes to everything that we do in society. But we can't talk about the Fourth Amendment and your right not to be searched. Can't talk to a Supreme Court justice about that because we got a sexual harassment circus that we'll talk about when we come back from the break. Stay with us.
Google is developing an app to screen out content that the Chinese government considers too sensitive for its citizens. Translation? Google is helping China silence its political opposition.
China's chilling dictatorship is moving quickly to introduce social scorecards in which all citizens will be monitored 24/7
and ranked on their behavior.
A high rating means you get benefits like no deposit of renting house or skipping airport security. But the low scores means you can't rent a car or apply for visas. The Chinese government expects to make this system mandatory in 2020.
Google is planning to launch a censored version of its search engine in China.
The Chinese government, as people probably know, has a quite comprehensive internet censorship system set up, and it's known as the Great Firewall. It blocks all kinds of information about, political opponents of the ruling Communist Party regime there, all kinds of things that they're blocking out.
Companies agreed to ban particular sites or search times on topics like human rights, democracy, and free speech.
Google's really the CIA, but it's leftist run now, so it's run over to China, and it's a civil war inside the intelligence agencies.
These are serious people plotting to finagle the searches, which is what Google sells to us as being fair and unbiased.
Google alone could determine the outcome of almost any American election just by altering its search suggestions. We'd never know what happened.
Well, Google is being accused of hiding negative stories about Hillary and her campaign by changing its algorithm to bury stories like the Clinton body count story. That's according to website InfoWars.
So Google won't work with the Pentagon on artificial intelligence, but it's officially moved its main operations for AI to China and is merging with the Chinese government, letting them have all the technology.
So they're working on behalf of the fascist Chinese government, sending propaganda to its people to keep them under the control of the government. But we shouldn't worry about the fact that they have a chokehold on all human information in English. Not a big deal.
I mean, that's a lot you just said there, but I think we shouldn't worry.
It's all true.
So Google always swears that its liberal, anti-Trump views of the top people doesn't affect the search product. But here is documented proof of some Google executives wanting to tamper with searches as a form of political activism.
The Chinese government, let's remember, imprisons dissidents and Christians daily. They have more than 1 million Muslims in re-education camps. But the legitimate election of President Trump somehow conflicts with Google's vaunted values? Give me a break.
Google was working to get Hillary Clinton elected.
If a Google user types in Clinton body, they get car repair shop results instead of a story that talks about a list of people tied to the Clintons who have died under mysterious circumstances over the last 3 decades.
A new bombshell development reveals Hillary Clinton's leaked emails were likely responsible for the deaths of up to 20 CIA agents working in China.
Over a dozen CIA agents may have been killed as a result of Hillary Clinton's leaked emails.
The real election meddling is by Facebook and Google and others that are shadow banning people, that are outright banning people, and they're blocking conservatives involved in their own First Amendment political speech. Shame on the mainstream corporate media for not defending the First Amendment, but instead attack dogging, calling for federal regulators to shut down independent free press, working with big tech.
You're not allowed to get the InfoWars official app on your iPhone. You're not allowed to watch the Alex Jones Show on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. But if you're the Chinese government and you want access to every citizen and all their data and everything they've ever done on an Apple product, good to go, baby. Good to go. And the left in America loves it.
You're listening to Real News with David Knight.
Welcome back. Before I get into Fear of Flying, isn't that a book by Erica Jong or something? Back well, it kind of was about the sexual revolution, and of course, this is about a sexual revolution as well. So we're going to talk about Chrissy Ford's Fear of Flying as part of the Me Too counter-revolution. But before we do, real quickly, I want to tell you about some of the products that we have at InfoWarsStore.com, because that's what supports this program. And we have a special for the listeners of this program. Just use the code REALNEWS at checkout to save 15% off of our large gravity feed ProPure King water filtration system. You need to be proactive on that. Don't wait until after you find out that there's something in the water. This has happened time and again, whether it is accidental or whether it's deliberate. And when the government finds out about it and sits on this information for years, then the damage has been done to you and to your family. So always be proactive. You can save 15% off the ProPure King gravity feed water filtration system, something that will help you to prepare for natural emergencies as well, where you don't have any power, because it works with gravity, and gravity never quits, unlike electricity. So again, code Real News to get 15% off the ProPure King water filtration system. We also have BrainForce Plus, 40% off. Secret 12, our vitamin B12 formula, 40% off. We have Super Male and Super Female Vitality, 50% off. And finally, we have our Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, our final run of that, 25% off while supplies last. Take a look at the products that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. We really do need and appreciate your support. All right, so we have Chrissy Ford saying that she couldn't come, at least her lawyers said that. So she couldn't come on the 17th. We had to delay this because she didn't want to fly. And explaining why their client could not grant committee chairman Chuck Grassley's request that she travel to Washington, D.C. to testify on September the 17th, her lawyers cited her unwillingness to fly, which they claim stemmed from her fear of enclosed spaces. They said that she suffers from claustrophobia that was brought on by this alleged assault. And of course, she not only talked about her claustrophobia, she talked at great lengths about how she had to have multiple front doors to her house or something like that, all because of this alleged assault 35 years ago. And so because of all that, the fact that she had to have a second door on her house, of course, she couldn't get into a small confined space like an airplane, except she did. That's how she got there. And she is still so traumatized. And that is one of the things. In terms of my general takeaway, like I said yesterday as it was happening, I thought the Arizona prosecutor Rachel Mitchell was totally ineffective. She failed to draw conclusions about things, to point out what was really happening. She was just asking details without any point. Without any point. It's pointless what she was doing. Everybody's so afraid of appearing to bully Chrissy Ford. We can't see her yearbooks, although Kavanaugh's yearbooks are fair game. Everybody has analyzed everything about them, including the flatulence comments by 16-year-olds. But we can't even see the kind of environment or character or, the environment that she was living in, the parties and the friends and what she was like. Can't see that. This is only about destroying his life. Can't look at her life or anything that has to do with context of this. What was it like for these teenagers? Is this something that was out of the ordinary that is even alleged? Was that even out of the ordinary for these teenagers? Evidently not, according to all of their yearbooks. But we can't see that because that'd be bullying. And we can't bully her by making her get on a plane, except that she did. And this is one of the few cases where the Arizona sex crimes prosecutor Rachel Mitchell actually drew a conclusion. Let's play video 6, where they talk about how she managed to get to Washington, D.C. this time.
May I ask, Dr. Ford, how did you get to Washington?
In an airplane.
Okay. I asked that because it's been reported by the press that you would not submit to an interview with the committee because of your fear of flying. Is that true?
Well, I was hoping that they would come to me, but then realized that was an unrealistic request.
It would have been a quicker trip for me.
Well, her lawyers said that she was afraid to fly. So just give a straight answer. And the prosecutor doesn't force her to give a straight answer.
Was to avoid having to get on an airplane, but I eventually was able to.
But are you afraid? Are you afraid?
Get up the gumption with the help of some friends and get on the plane.
When you were here in the mid-Atlantic area back in August, end of July, August, how did you get here?
Also by airplane. I come here once a year during the summer to visit my family.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not here. I go to Delaware.
Okay. In fact, you fly fairly frequently for your hobbies, and you've had to fly for your work. Is that true?
Correct, unfortunately.
You were a consulting biostatistician in Sydney, Australia. Is that right?
I've never been to Australia, but the company that I worked for is based in Australia, and they have an office in San Francisco, California.
Okay.
I don't think I'll make it to Australia.
It is long. I also saw on your CV that you list the following interests of surf travel and you, in parentheses, put Hawaii, Costa Rica, South Pacific Islands, and French Polynesia. Have you been all to those places?
Correct.
By
She got
airplane?
to French Polynesia.
And
Hawaii.
your interests also include oceanography, Hawaiian and Tahitian culture. Did you
Tahiti.
travel by air as a part of those interests?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Easier for me to travel going that direction when it's a vacation.
Okay. So she avoided the central questions. This is why this prosecutor was so ineffective. Xanax is used for fear of flying. They say, yeah, maybe that's what she's suffering from, right? She's under a Xanax cloud. I know she's flying through the clouds, and she's doing it on a regular basis. She goes to Tahiti, she goes to Hawaii frequently and so forth, but she couldn't fly from the West Coast to the East Coast, according to her lawyers, because she has been traumatized by this event 35 years ago. To the extent she has had multiple doors on her house and all these other things because she's claustrophobic, yet it doesn't seem to affect her flying. She flies a lot more frequently than I do. I have a fear of tyranny. And so I don't want to support a system that embraces what we see with the TSA. And I wish we could have a discussion about that as part of a Supreme Court hearing. But no, we're going to talk about that, what she wants to do, whether or not she's claustrophobic from an attack. And that's my other comment about this. When we look at the two individuals, look at how angry and even tearful Kavanaugh was on multiple occasions as he was seeing his reputation, his lifetime trashed publicly in this McCarthyistic witch hunt by this Democrat coven in the Senate. And yet she was kind of glib about all this kind of stuff. She didn't seem like somebody that was still traumatized by this, like she couldn't fly. As a matter of fact, she didn't seem to be bothered by this at all. And those are the issues we're going to take a look at when we come back on the other side of the break. When she talks about the drive home, when she talks about the meeting in the Safeway store, I don't see, even in her recollection of these events, any indication that she was traumatized at that time. And I don't see any indication that she is very upset about this right now. Quite frankly, I don't believe a thing she says. I certainly don't believe a thing that Feinstein and Schumer and Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and the rest of that ilk say. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight.
The Real Red Pill Plus, ladies and gentlemen. Our team is constantly on the lookout for newer and better ways to improve our products. That's why we're bringing you a brand new version of one of the newest fan favorite products, the Real Red Pill Plus. The Real Red Pill Plus is an all-new version of the powerhouse Pregnenolone product. It features the same great formula that supports your heart, brain, healthy aging process with an all-new natural caffeine boost included. A powerful Pregnenolone base, the Real Red Pill, has quickly become one of our fellow InfoWarriors' favorite products. Now, with an extra proprietary energy blend inside, including green tea extract, yerba mate leaf extract, and more, you can get that extra pick-me-up while supporting your mind and body in a healthy way. It's got all the great stuff that Real Red Pill has, but it's also got the boost in it. Get the Real Red Pill Plus at InfoWarsStore.com.
Hey guys, my name is Savannah Hernandez, and if you're always on the go like me, then you're not always tied to your computer or TV. So we just released our free InfoWars official app. The InfoWars official app includes all of our live broadcasts like War Room with Owen Schroyer, Real News with David Knight, and the holy grail of podcasts and radio, The Alex Jones Show. And the best part about the InfoWars official app is that every single time